started, please? Everybody, please stand for the pledge.
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Arlene, can you do the roll call, please?
Sure. John Aldred. Francis Bach.
Here.
Brian Burns. Absent. Okay. Del Cullen.
Here.
Rick Drew.
Here.
Jim Grimes.
Here.
Susan McGraw-Keeber.
Here.
Bill Taylor.
Here.
Susan Vorpal.
Here.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll start with public comment. Okay, we have a lot of people here from Lazy Point. You want to?
Yeah.
I would like to do that first if we could.
Okay. Take it.
Okay, we have a representative from Lazy Point here as the first thing on our agenda. It's all yours.
Good evening. I'm Joan Priori. I'm speaking on behalf of the Lazy Point Neighborhood Association in support of the 35-year lease proposal. I believe a lot of Lazy Point people are here this evening. Could you all raise your hands? Thank you. Long-term leases will benefit homeowners, the residents of East Hampton, and the trustees. Lazy Point homeowners, especially those of us who are senior citizens, need to feel a sense of certainty that our homes will be here for us and for our families in the future. Year-to-year leases don't provide that assurance, and 35-year leases will. Longer leases will enable us to perhaps get loans to make improvements and repairs. The trustees have clearly stated that no structural change can be made to any Lazy Point home without their approval. We know that is cast in stone, and the term of the lease won't make any difference. Well-maintained and updated homes can demand higher selling prices. You, the trustees, will benefit financially from the 4% transfer fee. The residents of East Hampton should, hopefully, be in favor of 35-year leases for Lazy Point because it will make mortgage financing a possibility. And that will open up a path for more of them to contemplate buying a house at Lazy Point. With, over the years, skyrocketing real estate prices coupled with the year-to-year lease have made it impossible for most people to buy a home unless they happen to be one of the very few who have a huge amount of cash on hand to pay for a house. With longer leases, buyers who were were previously wary of buying a house at Lazy Point will now see it as a safe investment. These are important things to consider when reviewing this proposal. Lazy Point has a certain charm and character. It's an out-of-the-way, un-Hamptons enclave. It's a throwback to simpler times. Neighbors are always there for neighbors, and we are always there for Lazy Point. When storm fencing was needed in order to prevent beach erosion, we got together, paid for it, and put up the storm fencing ourselves. I think Dell can attest to the fact that we always show up for spring cleaning. The homeowners and trustees share the same goal, and that is to preserve the unique character of Lazy Point. So when you are ready to vote, we ask you to vote yes for 35-year leases, confident in knowing it will benefit everyone, and it won't change anything about what makes Lazy Point, Lazy Point. Finally, we wish to thank Jim Grimes, Brian Burns, who is not here, and the trustee attorney, Chris Carrillo, for all the time and effort you have put into this proposal. And we thank all of you for your careful consideration that you have given this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. I think if we could, while we're on the subject of Lazy Point, if there's anybody else here that has a statement or would like to be heard, this, I think, probably be the best time to do that. But thank you for coming. We really appreciate the fact that this partnership will continue the way it has.
Okay. I want to explain that.
That's it.
Hey, I'll add that not only does the Lacey Point folks turn out for the spring cleaning, they always do the most amazing job out of everyone in the whole stretch of the cleaning day. You guys have accumulated unbelievable amounts of trash. I don't know where it comes from, but you guys found it and we got rid of it, and that's all that counts, so I appreciate that. You do, you do. It's always spotless. Looks great.
Anybody who finds Mylar balloons, would you please contact me? Good. I would like to have it. I'll come in and get it. Yes, anybody who finds Mylar balloons, please notify me, because that's on my agenda next, Mylar balloons.
Okay, I'd like to point out that the board has just received a draft copy of this lease agreement tonight, so we're going to have to review it and discuss it. And
Hopefully next meeting, we can have a discussion about this and maybe come to some closure on it. So,
But don't we have to have
so
a,
come next meeting, too.
don't we have to have a public hearing? We have to give a 30-day notice for a public hearing before we
Do
enact?
we? I don't know.
I think we should.
Sure.
who does?
Is the-
Rick
the-
Whalen.
You know, it's,
Richard Whalen, I'd like to just make a quick statement. As a citizen of the town, I don't represent anybody here, and I have no interest in Lazy Point. As you know, I was counsel for a couple of years to this board, and the issue of the length of the trustee leases at Lazy Point never came up, thankfully. But I have to say that it always struck me that the idea of one-year leases is totally outdated. And it's long past time that you went to having long-term leases, which is beneficial, I think, to obviously to people who live in Lazy Point, but to the town as a whole. So I hope that you proceed, in that fashion.
Rick, could you stay up there for just a minute? In your capacity as an attorney and maybe collaborating with our counsel, is this something that you think deserves or requires a 30-day notice and public hearing?
There's no requirement per se for public hearing. It is it's a major change. I certainly think it's within your right to do that. If I was your attorney, I'd probably, which I'm not anymore, I'd probably say that, it may be something that you want to seriously think about having a hearing on.
Okay, well. All right, hey, thanks. Okay, that said, how does the rest of this board feel about that? If we'd like the public hearing, and if that's the consensus of this board, I would urge us to make that motion here and now and get that process in the works, because.
You need to speak up.
I'm sorry.
I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm just speaking to the rest of our board. I'm sorry I wasn't really addressing the public, but I think if that's the consensus of the board here tonight, I would like to get that as a motion. And
I think maybe we should do that after we come up with a final draft. This is just a draft, and I have a lot of questions about this,
well,
that we as a board have not gone over. So I think to present this to the public when we haven't even had a
well,
chance to discuss this and
we
gone
would
over
have
this.
30 days.
30 days.
I think,
And
I think,
between now and then, we can
I
discuss
would
it.
certainly hope within 30 days, we could read whatever's written, come up with some questions, make some recommendations for changes. My concern here is this: it's very easy on something like this to keep kicking this can down the road and put off making a decision. The Lazy Point leases renew in April. This lease document is not a hard and fast final document. There is, I believe, language in there to keep this more or less as a living document between the trustees and the Lazy Point community. And I would not want to see this fall in the same sort of capacity that some other things regarding the Lazy Point community. I wouldn't want to see it go the same way and receive the same sort of ultimate response from the public or the Lazy Point community. So,
Hey, Jim, can I make a suggestion?
sure.
The last time the rules and regulations were updated, they were noticed in the paper, and that was put in for a 21-day period. And I think Mr. Courtney recommended that. And that would bring us, I think, to the last meeting in March. So is that a fair kind of compromise where it gives us time to advise the public through a proper notice and gives us time to work through this?
But we can't even present this document to the public
Well,
right now.
I think it
So
would be
if we're not able to present this to the public for another 21 or 30 days, how are they gonna have the opportunity to review it? We haven't even had that
We
opportunity.
can publish it.
Yeah, we can publish it.
Yeah.
You know, if there's no requirement that we actually have a 30-day waiting period, I think the 25th would work out. I think we should move for that.
And I think we may take a more accelerated stand to review it and maybe call a special meeting or two.
Yeah, we
Do
should,
that
that's-
on behalf of the public.
I think we
should
should definitely have a special meeting where we can really just talk about this and have the time to, sit with this, not be
Have Chris with us. But
Yeah.
certainly if the leases are going to expire in April, rather than have to redo all of the leases, if
But
we
we
can
don't-
address this and
But we should,
put our nose to the
we
grind,
should
I
not
think it's
take a
important to do.
knee-jerk reaction on here on something that is that important, not only to the Lazy Point community, but to the public.
yeah, but the Lazy Point issue has been discussed by this board over the past 5 or 6 years.
Okay, but not all of us have been on
No, I
that board.
understand that, but it's not a new, it's
I
not
und-
newly, it's not
I
a new
understand that.
item.
But this is not something that should just be, I don't feel, there's a lot in here. And there's a lot of questions that I have that I would like to discuss with the board.
Has this new document changed much from the previous
No,
one?
it hasn't.
So I can speak to it for a little bit with you. So I presented a draft to the board, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. Since then, spent a lot of time working on it. I think it's more of a near final draft. There are still some questions that have to be answered. Spent some good time with John Aldred, sort of poking holes in this document and trying to really make sure we protect ourselves against potential exposure in the future. This is a potentially 35-year document, so it is, nearing its final stage. It's definitely close to a final draft. My recommendation would be to call a special meeting much sooner rather than later. If we can agree on a time, some date next week, I think that would be ideal, at which point we can make a decision on how soon to notice a public hearing, whether it be 14, 21, or 30 days. Maybe we can all get together, get comfortable with this document, and get out to the public next week. I think that would be our best course of action.
I think that sounds
Is
reasonable
that-
enough.
Is that reasonable?
I think so. Let's get it going.
Should we make a motion for that?
Or we can table this and, Table
We have
this
to
and-
post
and-
a special meeting, we can't just,
Right, but I'm saying, should we make a motion to have a special meeting? Do
I'll
we need
make-
to do that?
Can we agree on a date?
I'm pretty open.
Any chance for a week from Thursday? In the
Calendar,
5 o'clock, 5:30,
that would be March
March
6th.
7th?
The Wednesday, did you say?
Thursday.
Thursday, that would be the 7th.
I'm not available,
March 7th?
no.
March
is it,
6th?
is it
I could do the
possible to
6th.
meet with, I would meet with you, or not the whole group, but,
I think it'd be,
I've already read it, and
yeah.
I just have a few questions.
guys, I think it probably would be most productive if we met as a group,
Yes.
only because when we have these sort of compartmentalized meetings, clearly there's gonna be issues that come out that then are gonna need to be rehashed yet again. at a later meeting, so if
Mine
we
are
can.
just questions, that's why
Yeah, no, no.
I offered it.
No, and I
because-
think
Everybody should hear everybody's questions
Yeah,
and
oh, I
the answers
agree,
to
I
the
agree.
questions.
Yeah, so,
And it would
I
just-
Is
mean-
there availability later this week, Thursday or
I'm
Friday?
available.
I'm available.
I'll make
No,
myself.
this week I'm out of
can't-
state most
I
of the
can't do
week,
this
so.
week.
So Monday is the 4th, March 4th, Tuesday the 5th, 6th? Anybody?
I can do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
I'm available any day.
I can
So
do the
I will-
6th or 7th.
Tuesday,
Francis is not available on the 7th, right?
I'm
How
available
does
the
the 6th
6th.
look?
I'm available the 6th.
Wednesday the 6th?
How about you?
6th?
6th is good.
Wednesday
I
the
can do the
6th?
6th, March
evening,
6th.
So
right?
should we make a motion to,
All right,
make a motion to,
we'll post a special meeting for March 6th. At what time?
5 o'clock,
Want it that
What
early?
day is it?
5:30?
It's a
Whatever you
because
guys want.
everybody's at work until 5,
5:30?
5:30? Wednesday, March 6th, to hold a special meeting.
Are you available, Chris?
Yes.
Okay.
What time?
5 o'clock,
5:30.
5:30,
At the,
Trustee?
trustee office. Can do that.
All right, we'll post that. So,
And then
Yeah.
how about the public public hearing?
I need 10 days lead time just to get it in the paper, so you are going to be really.
well, we can do that at the meeting next week.
Okay, as long as there's time to do the proper posting so that we can get this
Will
settled
that get in
for.
the following
7,
Monday
8.
if we post the public notice on Thursday? Will that get into the paper, Arlene, for the following week?
They almost like to have the
that by
deadline like the
Be a week.
Thursday or Friday a week before. I
So
mean,
why
they
don't-
can make an exception and put it in like Monday, but morning.
No, we can do it Thursday, the day after the meeting.
So, okay.
So we'd put-
7th.
We'd be able to put it on the 7th for the following
For the
Thursday.
following Thursday would be the 14th.
Okay,
Following
I'm
Thursday is
talking
the
about for the
14th,
last
it's really-
meeting, for the public meeting on this, for the last meeting of the month. Why don't we just post that now?
Okay.
I mean, you're making assumptions that this is
We're gonna
going
be
to go
ready?
through smooth. Yeah.
Could probably pull the
I'm a
public
positive
notice
guy,
easier.
Why don't we try, set the date, and then something comes up in between, Jim. But I
Yeah.
think moving along and trying to set specific dates is.
We
We'll see
usually have the
how it
leases
turns out. If we
done.
have our special meeting and there are things that need to be answered and are not readily able to be handled, then we'll have to postpone. But I think to set at least a program in place is a good way to go.
Okay. I'll go along with that.
So what's the
So-
date, Susan?
So all right, so the Monday, the
6th.
11th, 14th, the paper would come out. The 6th is the date for the special meeting at 5:30 at Bluff Road. And then you'll put that into notice on the 7th?
Yeah.
For the paper, and that would come out on the 14th. Oops.
Meeting will be on the 25th.
And then the next meeting for us is the 25th. So we can at least have a target for the resolution. Okay?
And the time on a
The
special
time,
meeting?
and the special meeting will be 5:30, Bluff Road. March
So
6th.
we're not making this year's leases if we're putting it off already 2 weeks, already 2 or 3 weeks to get a public notice in. Lori usually has them done already by the first week of March, but, it's a lot of leases, it's a lot of paperwork.
Well, we'll talk about that after.
Yeah.
Anybody
Does that
have
sound
anything
good?
else?
We're moving ahead, we're moving
So,
ahead.
is that a motion?
Yeah,
Yes, I'll make a motion for a special meeting,
there a
March 6th,
second?
5:30.
I'll second it.
all in favor?
And then are you setting the
Okay,
public
I
hearing
didn't,
date
I
as
didn't
well?
hear enough, let's
And
go
the-
around.
Aye.
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 Aye,
Aye.
for a special meeting.
Okay,
And then the public hearing will be on the 25th.
we'll see.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
not done.
So we're not
We'll
going to
try
make any
it.
motion
Well-
for that. That's a goal. We'll try, we'll see
We'll,
what
we'll
happens.
confirm it on Thursday,
Okay.
Yeah, but there's no 30-day
or
notice.
Wednesday, whatever the date is.
There's no requirement for a
Right.
notice. The attorney says we're having a public hearing out of an abundance of precaution.
Okay. So we'll moving on. Mark Mendelman?
Hi, good evening, trustees. Mark Mendelman with Seacoast Enterprises Associates. Couple things just to talk about tonight. Sent in some letters. First is our maintenance permit for work at 3 Mile Harbor Marina. This is a ongoing permit for maintenance that one of the conditions in the permit for renewal is to submit to the trustees on an annual basis a scale drawing with an explanation of the maintenance that we've done in the past year and the maintenance that we expect to do in the upcoming year. This year, from what we've completed perspective, has been very minor. We've focused all on the upland side of things with the construction of a new clubhouse and bathrooms and sanitary system associated with that. So really just minor maintenance has occurred on the docks and the bulkheads. For 2019, we expect to replace a section of creosote bulkhead. We expect to do some minor dredging, and we expect to install the 3 finger piers that were provided for in the permit. So that's where we are, and we're asking for renewal of that permit.
Okay. When,
Would now be the appropriate time to make a motion to,
when do you expect to start the work?
Well, we'll expect to install the finger piers in the next month.
Okay.
The rest of the dredging and the bulkheading work won't happen until next spring.
so this is a three-year permit. They were required to come in each year and tell us what they did that year and make sure we're okay with proceeding with the work into the second year. And all that's been done. Mark's made a drawing of what they've done in the first year, and they're proceeding into the second year with additional work that's permitted, so. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the drawing and the work that's been done.
I'll
and
second that.
Move forward into the second
With-
year.
This is the final year of the permit? Is that
Second.
correct?
One more year.
This
There's
is-
one more after this?
Right, because we did that last year, right?
And just, I'm going to recuse myself from the vote since I work for Seacoast Enterprises.
Okay, I'm,
Okay, so I will make a motion, I second that, your motion.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about was we submitted our application under the pilot transient mooring program for 6 transient moorings for this year with the appropriate fees. This is, I passed around a little bit of a write-up on the background and results of this pilot program, since this year is the last of the 5 years associated with that initial program. So in 2015, the trustees asked marina operators in 3 Mile Harbor to express an interest in a pilot transient mooring program where the marina operators would purchase and install and manage up to 10 transient moorings, which the trustees would grant the permits for. Seacoast Enterprises responded with interest for 4 moorings to start. No other marina operators responded at that time with interest. And we requested the permit be valid for up to 5 years so that it would pay back the investment of the equipment. That program was enacted for 5 years. It's due to expire in December of 2019, so plenty of time to make plans for something. But a review of that pilot program is warranted, and a determination of whether a continuing program should be put in place after that should be made if the program is deemed successful. So I wanted to just review our thoughts on what the results of the pilot program were. It's successfully provided public access to safe, controlled moorings for visiting boaters. The transient boaters that have come have benefited the town's tourism economy. So by making 3 Mile Harbor more accessible to transient boaters, the moorings have enhanced the town's economy. The mooring program has provided $10,800 of no-risk permit revenues to the trustees over this 5-year period. We, as the operator, have had modest returns on the investment. From a business standpoint, the economics only make sense to us because we have the boat, the personnel, all the infrastructure already in place. If we were trying to do this as a standalone business, it would make no sense for a standalone business based solely on transient moorings. The number of transient moorings was 4 in 2015, 4 in 2016, 5 in 2017, 5 in 2018, and 6 this year. We've never reached full capacity of the 10 transient moorings just because there hasn't been that additional demand. We still see plenty of days out of the summer where the moorings are empty most of the time. We get maybe a couple weekends where we're full. One of the goals of the transient mooring program was to control the location of transient mooring, but we still have plenty of visiting boaters coming to 3 Mile Harbor and anchoring, which doesn't really help that. The transient moorings, those boaters that do use the transient moorings are generally extremely responsible. They're willing to pay that extra fee so that they're not going to drift, and they can have that peace of mind. They use the trustee pump-out boat. They're generally a higher class of boater because they're willing to pay that fee and for that peace of mind. So they're more respectful of the environment. They use the systems and the things that are in place for them. We're not aware of any public dissatisfaction or any complaints about boaters staying on the transient moorings. Unauthorized use does indeed occur. We have people picking up the transient moorings, so we've been enforcing that ourselves, and that seems to have generated a little bit of public knowledge that we're out there looking, and if you're staying on one of those moorings, you're going to get asked to pay the fee or leave. The town's dinghy dock at the southern end of the harbor is generally utilized by those boaters that are anchoring and not on the transient moorings. We offer a dinghy dock at our marina for anyone who's staying on the transient moorings. So the town's dinghy dock is generally used, and whether or not that's really a dinghy dock is questionable, but that's generally used by folks that are staying on anchor. We do see requests for a launch service, but we haven't seen the demand associated with being able to pay for a dedicated launch. And we've had multiple requests for stays longer than the 3-day maximum specified in the pilot program. And we really don't see any reason why the length of stay on a mooring couldn't be made a little bit longer. So our recommendations is to continue with the transient mooring program, and that would be offered to all marina operators in 3 Mile Harbor, just like it was the last time, with a resolution to provide up to 10 per year for any qualified marina operator wishing to participate, and include in those requirements all the requirements previously listed, except maybe go to 7 days instead of 3 days as a maximum stay. So that's for your information. And since it's already permitted for 2019, I'm just advising you that we're requesting 6 this year.
Okay.
That's it. Any questions from me about?
Joan and I met down there with Mr. Mendelman, that everything seems to be going very well.
Yeah, it seems as though this arrangement is good for the trustees, it's good for the harbor, and it's good for the marina operator and the boater. So I think it's something we should, consider continuing for 5 or more years. I think it's something we can sleep on and take a look at this and maybe revisit at the next meeting.
Generally, how many nights do they request?
Depends.
On average.
Weekends, usually, they'll come in on a Friday night, stay on a Saturday night. But we do see those requests. So it's usually 2 days.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's 1 days, but not very often. And then you get the week-long requests where they want to come in, usually leave the boat on the mooring, go into town, stay with friends, and
Right.
then the following weekend.
So,
Okay.
I
to me, reasonable to have a week's pay.
Especially given the fact that these moorings sit vacant as
Yeah.
much time as they do.
There's very little, I mean, there's nowhere near the volume of traffic, you know, that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't see a
think
problem with
10 day-
extending it to
10 days would
a
even
week.
be okay.
And
What is
you
the
guys
fee
are
that's
managing it,
charged?
so.
What is the
That's up to
fee?
them.
That's up to,
It is. Right now, it's 55 a night during the off-peak and 75 a night during the peak season. And it's all on the web.
and some of that comes back to the trustees?
Yeah,
We get a set,
Mooring.
We get a
we get a
You
flat
get the
fee.
fee for the
Trustees
mooring?
get the $450 per mooring, which is based on an average 40-foot boat for a seasonal, not seasonal, sorry. 40-foot times $25 a foot, something, does that sound right?
Yeah, whatever,
It's
yeah.
the regular, yeah, it's,
No, $10. So the resident rate for a large boat mooring in 3 Mile Harbor is $10 a foot, so 40 feet, 45 feet, $450 per
it's an
mooring.
administrative fee.
So you
some of
collect that and it gets back to the trustees?
we-
Or they
we pay
the
that as-
They're
trustees?
leasing-
They pay.
Basically, they're leasing the moorings from the trustees for the season, is what it comes down to.
We're
This
leasing the
gets us-
bottom land for
This gets us
$450.
completely out of all of
Moorings
the daily
belong
fee
to them.
collection.
Correct. Well, yeah, I mean.
We have to buy the
You're
equipment,
leasing
we
the
have to
ability to drop them.
put it in,
Yeah.
take it out,
It's
service
just
it.
strictly we're just leasing them the land.
The trustees used to try to manage the transient moorings, and
Yeah, it
it's
got out
not
of
easy to
hand.
do. So
Yeah, because we don't have the
this
personnel
was
out there
the answer to that.
to
Right.
manage that.
So we kind of folded in with transient boat slips. It kind of becomes part of that whole offering to people. And we're monitoring for usage on them. We're on the radio for people coming in. We're directing them to where they need to go. And like I said, it's a no-risk fee that the trustees generate from this.
Yeah, you're taking all the
We're
risk.
taking all the risk.
It's a model that's used in a lot of other maritime communities.
Sounds like
John,
it's
did you want to
working
make a motion to just approve this tonight?
No, we have to put it out
Plenty of
to
time.
offer.
There's plenty of time to
Yeah.
figure out. Doesn't expire until December.
Mark,
Yes.
we need to close out this permit.
Yes, thank you, John. So I also, with that maintenance permit, we had some open permits that were sitting out there waiting for a survey to be turned in. I did turn in an as-built survey, which we had produced in order to get the C of O on the property. So that's been turned in, and the permit that was open was,
Mark, what marina is this?
this is 3 Mile Harbor
Mile
Marina.
Harbor. Okay.
Close out.
So this is the
T number
That's the
6-6.
as-built survey. So I'd like to make a motion to close out permit T-6-16, understanding that the required survey has been submitted.
All right, I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
No, I'm going to recuse myself from that one, sorry, excuse me.
Okay, any other questions for me or anything to discuss?
No,
How did
thank you.
how did the Flupsy one?
Oh, the Flupsies, both Flupsies are in. Only one of them ran for about a month at the end of the season last year. They're still in the water, and they expect to set them back up in the spring and turn them on. And I know they were growing quite well.
Did they take the clams away?
Yeah, they took the clams away. But I deem that an incredible success as well, that those are there operating.
All right, good.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
you.
Okay, Rick Whalen?
Yes, please, thank you. Thank you. I'll circulate.
Good evening, Richard Whalen. I'm here to address you on an application in front of the zoning board that's coming up in a couple of weeks, and you have it actually on your agenda. Let me pass out one, just have one minute after we pass this around. So I don't know how many members remember back to, remember a fellow named...
Good night, thank you. Nice to see you.
A fellow named Rob Coe, he lived on Three Mile Harbor Drive, has a house on the water on Three Mile Harbor, on Three Mile Harbor Drive up in Northwest. He was active in Three Mile Harbor matters for a very long period of time. So this is his former house. So my client is a gentleman named John Foley. He bought the property a couple of years ago, I guess. And so he has an application to basically demolish the Coe house, rebuild a new house, make certain improvements environmentally, as I will describe to you, but basically rebuild the house to the same size it is right now.
The main house.
This is
The
18.
main house, there is only one house in the Coe property.
Okay. That's why
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed something that you said. I wanted to make
Oh,
sure.
okay.
We weren't talking about
It's
it.
18 Three Mile Harbor
18 Three Mile
Drive.
Harbor Drive.
18 Three Mile, and you do have it on your agenda, so I think the hearing
When is the
is,
zoning board hearing?
the hearing is scheduled for March 12th.
March 12th.
So I guess you would be discussing it anyway. And so I really want to speak to kind of a general issue, which I did address with you about a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago. It's sort of the same issue. The house is larger than GFA would allow today, town gross floor area would allow today. The house was built in 1984, so it's been there for 35 years. The current owner wants to rebuild to the same GFA, so we will need a GFA variance because under the town's gross floor area rules since 2008, adopted in 2008, the house would be oversized. So basically, the idea is to rebuild a house of the same size on the property. The house will move back about 10 feet from the coast. There'll be a buffer of vegetation in front of the house, between the house and the bluff edge, of about 15, increased by about 15 to 20 feet from what's there today, which is fairly minimal. There'll be a new drainage system. There are a couple of patios that are basically on the top of the bluff right now that will be removed. And finally, and most importantly, overall clearing on the property will be reduced. And finally, and most importantly, we are proposing, of course, to upgrade the existing sanitary system, which is a single cesspool system with the new low nitrogen IAOWTS system. So, as I expressed to you when I spoke to you last time, I still think that there is a bit of a reluctance by the zoning board to acknowledge the importance of the IA systems. And to my mind, those are very beneficial to you, and because you are the masters of Three Mile Harbor, and it's very, the issue that you're concerned about is water quality in Three Mile Harbor. So the planning department did do a memo on this. I will say, to their credit, the planner who wrote the memo, Tyler Borsak, did acknowledge in his memo that the proposed IA system would be a significant upgrade in terms of sanitary quality to what currently exists on the property. And I wanted to just read from you from the excerpt that I just handed around. You're familiar, of course, with the report that you commissioned from Dr. Chris Gobler, which is this report. This is the draft report from 2017. I don't know if there was ever a final report, but this is the Gobler report from 2017. And he made a couple of comments that I think are very important now in light of the fact that the health department allows low nitrogen systems, and as of January 2017, the town requires them in all new construction. Obviously, this is an upgrade of an existing sanitary system. But listen to what Gobler had to say with regard to Three Mile Harbor. The Three Mile Harbor watershed was shown to have the highest nitrogen loads in the entire town of East Hampton in terms of kilograms of nitrogen per year and kilograms of nitrogen per unit area per year. Three Mile Harbor was shown to have a greater proportion of its nitrogen loading emanating from wastewater, that means from septic waste, than any other water body in the town. 65% of nitrogen in Three Mile Harbor is believed by Gobler to be emanating from septic systems. Across all sites monitored during the study, there was a highly significant correlation between the nitrogen loading rate per hectare of watershed and the chlorophyll A level in the receiving water body. Chlorophyll A is a stand-in for the total mass of algae in the water column. This suggests that excessive nitrogen loading rates are promoting the water quality impairments within 3 Mile Harbor. There was also a significant correlation between the percentage of nitrogen load emanating from wastewater and average chlorophyll A levels, suggesting that wastewater-derived nitrogen may specifically be promoting algal blooms in 3 Mile Harbor. And finally, Dr. Goebel had a recommendation. He said, given that 3 Mile Harbor has the largest nitrogen loading rates within the town, that the large majority of this nitrogen emanates from wastewater, and the significant water quality impairment in the 3 Mile Harbor system, it seems clear that this watershed should be a priority location for upgrading septic tanks and cesspools within the town of East Hampton. So what I would ask you to do, if you have any questions about the specifics of the application, I'll be happy to answer them, but I believe that the project, although it, will maintain the very large size house, it is moving the house back from the coastline. It is improving the vegetative buffer between the house and lawn and the harbor.
Rick, could I just stop you? What's the overall depth of the proposed buffer,
It'll be around 25 to 30 feet. The vegetative buffer will be about 25 to 30 feet. I think that's to the bluff edge. I'm trying to remember. I think that's to the top of the bluff.
Okay.
How much room is there roughly between the proposed new front of the house and the bluff edge?
The answer is 50 feet. The house currently is around, I think the house is, it depends on where you're measuring from, the house, the actual physical house, or, we have window wells below the house. But let me describe it this way. The front deck of the house, we're actually amending our application in front of the zoning board because we were at a 49-foot setback, and the minimum setback is 50 feet. And I said, if you can be 49 feet, why don't we go to 50 feet? We should be able to do that and eliminate the setback. So we are doing that. So the front deck of the house and the associated patio with the swimming pool, which is south of the house, will be 50 feet back from the bluff. So the house will set back whatever the depth of the deck is. So the house is probably 60 feet from the bluff.
Do you have a survey with you?
I do, actually. So let me hand it around.
I'm not familiar with the property, Rick, but is the lay of the land such where the land grades? Because I know some of the properties on 3 Mile Harbor, the pitch runs back towards 3 Mile Harbor.
It doesn't. It runs downslope.
Towards the harbor?
Towards the harbor.
Okay.
Yeah, the property, in fact, if you're on 3 Mile Harbor Drive, this is one of those homes where it's below the road.
Okay.
You have to the driveway drops down from the road.
And I didn't look at this property, but I looked at a property a couple of doors up. Tell me if this is the same, Rick. The lawn seems to be relatively flat, pitching slightly down towards the harbor. And then there's a severe cliff. So it's the same here?
There is a bluff edge. There is a bluff. I don't know that the lawn has much of a pitch.
Francis.
Thank you.
The topo is shown on here, though. You'll see where the lawn is, which is the kind of the white area between the house and the hatching. It's fairly flat. At least that's what we are retaining as lawn. We are adding additional, right near, what you don't see right here is where the existing edge of lawn is almost to the bluff edge. And so you're not actually seeing that on here. Actually, I guess you are. I think it is show, yes, it does show the existing edge of lawn. I apologize, this thing is so small. It's actually, the surveyor was made for 24 by 36 inch print, which is too large. But
I'm assuming this is lawn here,
that's the shaded, that's gonna be revegetated.
revegetated, and then this piece is,
That's already
section.
vegetated. Yeah,
it is vegetated?
Yeah, let's see if I can,
All right.
you know what? I have a full
It's
size.
vegetated.
Okay, because one part of it shows that it's vegetated, but then directly in front of it, before the crest of the bluff, it's open, so I wasn't sure what that part was.
Sorry, the only large size, full size one I have. Okay, so, Three Harbor's at the bottom. The white area between the house and that, there is a dashed area here. That's proposed to be revegetated, it's currently lawn. This hatched area here.
Right.
You see the hatching area? That is lawn that's supposed to be revegetated. And you can see there are a couple of structures there, a circle and a rectangle. Those are patios that are kind of near the edge of the bluff, and those are proposed to be removed.
Is this stairway
These
existing?
here.
Stairway is existing, yes.
And
But,
this little landing too?
I believe so, yeah.
But Rick,
And that's gonna be removed?
it
No,
says
this little-
here,
The stair landing will stay.
it says here, your current clearing is 15,000. Well, it's 626, 826, it's really small. The proposed clearing during construction is roughly 22,000 square feet. The proposed clearing at the final is basically the same as what the clearing is right now.
This is the current proposal from the zoning, but we are changing it. We are gonna do.
Because it
more
looks like,
revegetation.
you're not doing any
No,
revegetation.
we'll be, in order to do the project, they do have to move, first of all, the clearing is based on what the surveyor did when he went out there. I've visited the site since then, and actually, he's showing a lot of stuff that's uncleared, that is landscaping, pachysandra, English ivy, a lot of stuff that's shown as uncleared is actually landscaping. But be that as it may, we'll have a revegetation plan that will bring back, even based on those clearing numbers, by the time we're done, more of the property will be natural vegetation than it is today. We're gonna do more
How much
revegetation on the north side of the house.
How much more?
The only area, the additional area that we're adding is on the north side of the house, between there's a walkway on the north side
Well,
of the house.
actually, you're showing, on this survey, you're showing, or, excuse me, yes, okay, on the north shore, on the 3 Mile Harbor side. But you're also showing quite a bit of revegetation wrapping all the way around to the
On
road.
the south is, yeah, all the stuff near the road right now, that's mostly landscaping.
Okay.
It's shown as uncleared, but it really isn't.
Well, no, you're showing quite a bit of stuff as being revegetated, according to this,
I
right?
think that's because of the work they have to do to go in there and to excavate to get in to do the project.
Okay.
Notice we're showing retaining walls. We're basically, to move the house further from the harbor, we have to eat into the slope that comes
Place is
down from
enclosed
Three
with
Mile
deer
Drive. So we're backing into the
Place
slope.
is enclosed.
No, I can see that.
that's what's
Yeah,
going
no, I understand that.
Can you just explain something to me on this? It's very hard, I can't
I know,
see
it's
the
so
small
small,
thing.
sorry.
But this area that has lines in it is vegetated.
That's
right?
proposed to be revegetated, that's lawn, that's
Lawn.
existing
To-
lawn that will be revegetated.
All right, and this strip of light, white,
It's existing natural vegetation here.
existing, okay.
That right
All
here
right,
is
so
existing
it would be
natural
even more, okay, terrific, thank
So
you.
Rick, is there a new survey
Yeah, I
that's
can't tell
forthcoming?
because
We have to submit a new survey to the board.
is it the
The new
slash
survey will
dots?
move the house back another
Well,
foot,
how come it goes out here?
to achieve the 50-foot bluff setback, and we'll add additional revegetation.
And
And
the
we
new
can do that
house
too.
is 10 feet back now from the existing house?
It's pulling back about 10 feet from the existing house right now, so make that, approximately 11 feet. The main point I wanted to make to you, though, is a larger issue.
Yeah.
And again, the planning department is not recommending denial of the application. They didn't write a glowing memo of endorsement, because they never do, but they didn't recommend denial. I think the important point for the trustees is, going forward, there are 27 homes on 3 Mile Harbor Drive that are on the water. 27 waterfront homes on 3 Mile Harbor. We checked as of today. As of today, the number of those homes that have upgraded to the new low nitrogen sanitary systems is zero. So these things, this is not gonna happen very readily, it's not gonna happen very rapidly. I think the town needs to work with property owners. If somebody's doing a project, and it's not an unreasonable project, and it involves exchanging an existing traditional sanitary system for the new low nitrogen system, that should be given very high consideration. And I think that the town is a little bit slow to acknowledge that there's been a technological change, that technology is beneficial to the town, it'll help improve surface water qualities, you gotta adopt it and encourage people to adopt it. Most of the time, those adoptions will probably come when someone has a project they wanna add on to their house, or in this case, they wanna rebuild a new house. If the town does not encourage people to do that sometimes, you're gonna get status quo for a long time. So that's my main point to you.
Sort of the conflict of interest, because this morning, Concerned Citizens of Montauk held a question and answer period about the low nitrogen septic tanks to encourage people to do this. And the town is encouraging people to do it.
Well,
so
they are, they
planning
do the
board should be on
rebates.
board.
The town does do the rebates, but the bottom line is, it's a hassle. So, I mean, I think the total number of people that have actually installed them to date, you know, we're maybe in the 24 range. There's 20,000 or so homes in the town of East Hampton.
Yeah, this whole thing is just starting on the project.
Yeah,
is a
it's
year
just
old.
starting, it's just starting.
It's moving, it's a lot of paperwork, investing, you know. And the nitrogen is not the only thing that, you know, that determines whether an addition is a burden to the community.
Right.
So, you know.
I just, this is a very big house. It's 4,700 square
Right,
feet.
which is the same size as the existing house.
I know. But the allowable square footage is some, what is it, like
4,100?
4,100 or something like that?
Allowable's 5,060. That's what I'm reading right here, coverage calculations.
No, the actual gross floor area.
Oh, okay.
That's the floor, first and second floor, that's 4,742 square feet.
I guess my question is, has the owners considered bringing it back to the allowable square, you know, building a new house to the allowable square footage, which is,
The owner's point of view is, I bought the house because I wanted a large house. Now, obviously, he'd like to build a new house that, you know, suits his tastes more, but he bought a 4,700 square foot house. He's legally entitled to that size. It's been there for 35 years. If he's gonna build a new house, he wants to build it to that size.
or is he legally entitled if the allowable square footage?
We need a variance. We need a variance to build a new house.
That's
What he's legally
determined-
entitled to
Allowable
is to
with
keep
a
the
vari-
house.
With a variance.
With the variance.
Correct, but remember, he's legally entitled to keep the house as it is.
Oh, I know that.
With the septic system.
With the current septic
Teabag-
system?
Teabagging in
Okay.
3 Mile Harbor.
Right.
The way it is, and I think this is, Rick's tried to make this point the last time, and it's a point well made, okay? There's a lot of these non-conforming properties out there along 3 Mile Harbor especially, okay? We can apply today's criteria to those houses, they could never be built. Okay, but they're pre-existing. They're covered under the pre-existing non-conforming statute. And there's gotta be an incentive for these property owners to voluntarily upgrade their septic systems. And in the situation like you have here, you got a property owner that wants to maintain his square footage. They're not asking to increase the size of this non-conforming structure. They're asking to maintain it, to mitigate what they're doing. They're upgrading a septic system. They're expanding the buffer to 3 Mile Harbor, and this becomes a question to the ZBA board. Does the mitigation attached to the new application give enough benefit to basically waive some of the rules? They don't have, the ZBA doesn't have to go along with it, except in a lot of cases, they don't. Many times, the planners do not recommend, well, they never recommend these projects. But, you know, there are opportunities, I think, and that's the point you're trying to make, Rick. There are opportunities that are lost, okay, for the improvement of our environment. And I think it's important for the public to understand in general, because, hey, there's been a long-standing sort of approach to planning out here, that it's got to become smaller, it's got to be less, we've got to cut back, we've got to do the other thing. But there's so much, that's a new construction, there's so much pre-existing property out here that can never be impacted, and nothing good is going to come of it until we do some give and take here a little bit. Because, you know, let's face it, you can drive around and see the houses that have, you can tell they considered going to the town and doing a site plan review, and in the end, they said, you know what? The hell with it. It's not worth it to me. I wanted what I had. I want to keep what I had. And I think, you know, I think it's nice to have this dialogue.
Well, the whole process is
valuable.
expensive and it's burdensome. And that's That's the reality. It's a difficult process to go through. So people are not encouraged to do this, and if they're not encouraged to do it, they're not being encouraged to upgrade their septic systems. So,
Well, also now we're at the point where it's law now, right? If you tear down, rebuild, increase the
If you-
size, it's required.
Yeah, but
So,
what-
Yeah.
so are those planning boards and zoning boards looking at that now? Is that they're not really looking at that as a mitigation issue anymore, right?
No,
It's
they're
more
not,
of a-
no, they're not, but you know,
That's right.
It's
Susan,
more of a-
that is a position
it's
they've
required now.
taken, but when you think about this, the reality is, if it doesn't get done, for whatever reason, it doesn't get done, it doesn't get done, okay? There is no net improvement to the environment, so I tend to take a look very similar to what Rick does. You look at some of these things and you have to measure, you know, there's no perfect world, and if you don't give somebody an incentive, there's no reason why they should basically play ball.
I think, to me,
But
it's
shouldn't
very
saving the
clear that the
environment be
benefits
incentive
of
enough
having
for
a
these people?
low
Actually,
nitrogen.
actually, can I tell you what? If you
I mean, you would
spend-
think, you have all these people, you know,
If you
wanting
spent-
water quality and clean
Yep.
water and,
Yep, but
clean
you know what?
beaches
If you
and-
spent $2.5 million on a house, that when you go to improve it, you're told that the 4,000 square foot house that you bought for $2.5 million, that you're getting ready to dump another $2 million into, is gonna be smaller than the friggin' house you bought. There isn't a lot of value to that, and you know, I do think that there is an opportunity here that didn't exist prior to these septic systems, okay? Prior to these septic systems, when you went to renovate, rebuild, do anything to your house, your septic system upgrade was really nominal in terms of improvement from what the system that you had there before. These newer systems are significantly, not exponentially, more efficient than the previous system. They're also, by the way, exponentially more expensive to install. So regardless of whether somebody's being required to do it,
And to own them.
or whether,
As well,
or whether
electricity.
they're doing, you know, let's face it, there is nobody out there without being subsidized, there's nobody out there that's upgrading these septic systems voluntarily. Why would you, you know,
We're very few.
unless you just really wanted to burn some money, there's not many people out there that are going to do that. And there's a lot of people out there that, quite frankly, can't afford to just go ahead and do that. But
To
I
me,
think
it's very
I
simple,
think
and it's very clear.
Well, it's
We're
a
improving the water.
it's a reasonable
It's-
change.
yes,
It's a reasonable,
it's
it's
a
a reasonable
compromise,
compromise.
But in order to, and I agree with you, in order to get people to do this, the incentive has to be there. There is a rebate program, and this is how, one by one, we clean up the water. We help to clean up the water. So I would tend to agree with exactly what you're saying. There's got to be something that is in it for the homeowner to do this, and it benefits the entire community and our harbors. It makes sense to try to move these through. And they are not expanding the house, which is unusual in today's market, where most people tear down something, they want to make a much larger home.
well, to be
and have
fair,
more
they
bathroom.
would have a
Pretty-
different house making the house bigger.
They have a pretty,
Already
they have a
over.
pretty
I think
big
the
house
house is big
already.
enough.
But is there a basement? Yes, of course it's big enough.
Bigger is
But I'm
not always
saying
better.
I'm not saying that it is, but I'm saying that people mostly, when they buy a house now, as a real estate broker, they want to tear down the old house and build some big monstrous house. So I'm glad to
not a
hear
monst,
that this
you know.
client of yours is staying within the footprint, really just wants to upgrade and is giving us back some property from the harbor, and we'll put in a new septic system, and we need those. It's important.
I'd like to see everybody give a little bit myself.
Well, I think when you're giving, in terms of, you started out with a yard that was significantly bigger, and at the end of the day, it's significantly smaller. And when you started out with a house that was 10 foot closer to the water, and now it's 10 foot farther away, you know, there's a balancing act here. The fact of the matter is
Get it,
here,
George,
guys,
I'm just
you
saying,
can't
it's still-
expect,
It's a very big house.
you can't expect everybody to subscribe to your personal feelings, whatever they may be, of, I only want a 1,200 square foot house. I live in a little house, and I gotta tell you, it's fine for me. But I also have to be respectful of the person that makes the investment and works within the system that we have here, within the codes, within the latitudes of the ZBA process to do these things, because quite frankly, when these things are articulated sometimes, it actually, to me, it sounds punitive. It really sounds like, I don't want to see somebody have more than perhaps what I have. And, you know, come on, I think you have to be fair in that respect. I can't afford a house on the water. I am not going to begrudge the person that can afford a house on the water.
So, look, I don't want to take any more of your time. You know, I appreciate your listening to me. Again, the point I'm bringing forward to you is kind of a generic point. This is going to recur. I mean, in my opinion, until the zoning board begins to recognize and acknowledge that there are benefits to be obtained from these systems, and a little bit of giving on the town's part is required too. This house is not becoming any bigger. It is being moved farther away from the water. There's a better buffer. The guy is reducing the lawn he has between his house and his bluff top. Everyone knows that that's usually a very valuable part of, you know, waterfront property. So, you know, that's really what I have to say, and I do appreciate
I
you
have
listening to
one
me.
question for you. When they're moving it back 10 feet from the water, the foundation, the foundation of the house, the whole,
The whole thing would be demolished and removed.
right, I was
Taking
going to say, the
everything out.
foundation is also gone.
Oh, yeah,
Putting in a
oh,
new
yes, yes, yes.
foundation.
Right, okay. Well, some houses don't have them.
All right?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Rick.
Thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you, Rick.
Okay, no, no, there's one more who signed up, and you can speak after. Okay, Rona Klopman?
Take one pass down. Arlene just gave it to me. It was from that Joan Perry. I think it's her letter.
This is the statement from the lady who spoke.
Yeah, Arlene. I think she gave copies to me.
Good evening, Board. Rona Klopman from Amagansett. I'm also here as secretary to the Recycling and Litter Committee, which met last week. And when I attended the meeting, we have been discussing banning smoking on the beach. And since I was here, I believe this is my third time. And the last time I appeared, you were going to discuss it with, the beach committee was going to discuss it, which I believe is Dell, Bill, and Rick, or James Grimes. I'm not sure which one of the beach committee. You're not, so then it's James and Bill and Dell. And this, I have come now presenting information regarding cigarette butts on the beach. They are a form of litter. The most littered item on the beach are cigarette butts. Because when you think about it, and you're a smoker and you're sitting on the beach, there is no receptacles. What do? You take your cigarette and you put it in the sand, thinking you're going to put it out. It's the most accessible way to do it, or you're going to flip it in the ocean if you're standing at the ocean and smoking. Now, a survey of 100 smokers found that 35% of smokers toss 5 or more cigarette butts per pack on the ground and don't think about the consequences of the butt litter. Because they're small, to them it's a small problem. And the overall littering rate for cigarette butts is 65%. People don't believe that throwing their cigarette butts on the ground or in the beach is inappropriate behavior. They think it's perfectly appropriate. And of course, there are no receptacles. You can't have glass on the beach. You can't have an ashtray on the beach. So they put it in the sand. So what I would like is to hear the discussion, because I'm going to bring them back to my committee, to the Recycling and Litter Committee, about what the beach committee thought about this. I'm sure you had a discussion. You have banned balloons, and cigarette filters are comprised, as you can see by what I've distributed to you, of cellulose acetate. It's a plastic which persists in the environment, and it represents 32% of all littered items collected. So hopefully I can bring back the comments to my committee.
from the beach committee.
My first comment will be that cigarette butts have more microplastic than any other over straws.
Well-
They are worse than straws.
And we are in the process, and thank you, Dell, because Dell's a member of the committee. We are putting out a PSA and going to, the town is going to ban plastic straws. That's our next, the next thing we're doing, and we've written the PSA, which Dell has kindly put pictures to, and it's fabulous. We've got it on Facebook. So, thank you, Dell. But I'd like to hear what the beach committee had to say.
Only you're talking to somebody that doesn't smoke, so.
I don't smoke either, but.
I'd be all in favor. You look like a smoker, though.
What does a smoker look like? What does a smoker look like?
You have those yellow fingers.
Honestly, this is a tough one. I mean, why can't, with all of the consciousness of health and everything else, even if you're gonna kill yourself, it would be nice if the industry could come out with a biodegradable cigarette filter.
Yeah, but it's the stuff that's left in the filter that.
Well, we can't invent something, these
Okay.
things are here today, so let's
Yeah.
deal with reality.
Hey, listen.
Throwing a cigarette butt on a beach is littering.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, but
illegal
people,
and it's
in
not
studies that
findable.
they've done, Bill, they don't consider it inappropriate behavior, smokers.
Well-
They think, the
Okay.
beach is a big
But Rona,
receptacle for
what-
cigarettes.
Well, so
Let's
is the
turn this around.
roadway,
What's the
they
litter, what is the
come out
litter,
of the
what is the litter committee? What are their feelings? Are they looking
Well,
to
I'm coming
ban-
here because they'd like to ban it. They'd like
Yeah?
the trustees to
'Cause I think
support it.
I think the village has gone on along that end. Now, if
The
they
village
ban-
has banned smoking.
If they banned the smoking, do they want to ban the vaping?
Well,
I'm
vaping-
dealing with
vaping,
reality.
there's
We're dealing with
no-
one thing at a time,
there's
and that's
no-
cigarettes.
There's no
I
debris.
don't know, I don't vape.
Throw away plastic.
I don't know if they throw the cartridges away,
Well,
or,
they probably throw everything away.
Listen,
but
I'm,
there's no-
do they?
I'm a little out of, I'm a little at a loss here, because I don't smoke, all right? And,
Well, just like you have a small house.
I
That doesn't mean a bigger house, you're not going to support it.
There's
Because
no-
you don't
No,
smoke
no,
doesn't mean,
But I'm just trying to be sympathetic to all parties here, listen, if I did smoke, I think I'd probably want to smoke on the beach. And if I was gonna smoke on the beach, I probably want to smoke on the beach in as environmentally
Would you bring an
conscious
ashtray and
way
take it away?
as I could. No, I think I'd have to switch over to the vaping.
You have to get people back to the
That would seem
military method of field stripping a cigarette.
Yeah?
We did have some discussion about this in the context of the villages banning vaping on the beaches without our consulting us about it.
Which I'm still
And-
waiting for a response from our attorney about that.
And I think, our general feeling was the enforcement here is just.
well, that's it with everything.
It's not
With-
gonna
with-
happen,
with
so.
that- Anything you do on the beach.
it's with all litter. I
Let
mean,
me-
people
let me-
throw stuff out
let
of
me
cars, and
finish.
police doesn't see them, they
So
don't
our
get a ticket.
feeling was, we probably would support a ban like this, in the swimming area, at the road end kind of thing, which could be enforceable. And, maybe leave the flats, the
Well,
areas between the beaches, not necessarily go that far, as a first step, perhaps.
It's still gonna be, I mean, it's a great idea and it's wonderful that, not to have butts and litter on our beaches. But to enforce it is a whole nother issue.
yeah.
It's almost impossible.
I mean, we
You
can
gotta
keep,
take a first step. I
It's
mean,
true,
without-
I
Rona.
mean, I think,
Rona, it's
you
true, but you
know,
can't it seems like we make all these laws we can't enforce. And it turns out, when you have these laws that you can't enforce, people look at them as opportunities that the laws don't exist.
Well, we have
Yeah,
we
well,
have in
I
place a
wouldn't
fire.
agree
You can't
that
go and
these are
build a
not-
fire on the beach unless you have a container.
Yeah, I would-
And that, we changed that, and people are paying attention,
Yeah.
and it's law.
And now they leave,
And
now they leave the burned containers on
All
the
right, but
beaches.
you know what, to me, if you implement a law that is good for the community, good for the air, good for the beach, good for the kids running on the beach, the law is there, people know it's wrong to do. I'm 100% for, personally, I'm 100% for banning all smoking on our beaches, clean air. We go to the beaches for clean air. I know that we voted, or did we not vote
We
to
didn't vote
not?
on
ha-
anything.
We didn't vote on the vaping or whatnot, but I'm in total agreement with not having smoking on the beach, because the butts are left behind, and they do have microplastics, and the microplastics are in the fish that you eat, in the fish store. Every fish, I have read in articles, several articles, that every piece of fish and marine life that we consume, we are eating plastic. And these are the worst offenders, so I'm totally for this.
So then how do you suggest it be,
If you make it law,
it's enforced?
the same way that they don't permit fires on the beach.
Well, it's a start.
Patrol goes,
It's unlawful to litter, but.
you have to stop at a stop
This man
sign.
here picks up.
You stop at
I
a
think
stop
it's
sign
very-
on the
What I
street,
mean,
and if you run
Jim-
the stop sign and you
Jim,
happen
what
to
I
get
mean
caught, you
is,
pay a fine.
Who's out there on the beach giving tickets for people tossing their cigarette butts on
Well,
the
I
ground?
think that's a matter of education within the enforcement community, but you know, the fact of the matter is, if I'm driving down the road and I get stuff blown out of the back of my truck, I get pulled over by a cop and he cites me. At the very least, he warns me, but they cite me. I would think that Marine Patrol and the police department
And lifeguards.
witnessing,
And
lifeguards are not
They're not
law
police.
enforcement.
But
But
they
they
can
can
see.
be the eyes on the beach.
And Marine
Okay.
Patrol
And that's
can't
where
be
the
everywhere.
concentration of people
yeah.
are.
Okay.
And that's what you want to reach,
But
is the
you-
concentration of people.
When
Marine
you,
Patrol force.
John, when you head down that road and you're asking somebody whose role is to basically watch out for the health and safety of the swimmers, and you're adding a duty to observe and report on something like that, and the confrontations that you invite on that individual, but I'm just saying, for the laws that are on the books right now,
Yeah.
I think probably the best thing is you start with, it's already illegal to litter, okay? We can work on the making smoking on the beach illegal, but even after you do that, you still have to enforce that statute, and it has to start somewhere, okay? And I think this is one of those things where the code enforcement side of this thing has to be a little more disciplined, has to be a little more diligence there. And you know what? Like a lot of things, perhaps it's not being taken as seriously as perhaps it should be now. But we have to work in a certain direction, because what is the answer here? The litter, the cigarette butts, any of that stuff. You know, you can easily get to the point where the only way you'll be able to go to the beach or go anywhere is bare-ass naked.
Right.
Okay, because if you bring anything with you, it could conceivably become garbage.
Well, all you got to do is educate people to take out what they
Yeah,
bring
yeah,
in.
and I
How
think that-
simpler
but
of
that
an
goes-
action is that?
Yeah.
And Jim, let me give you 2 words to explain all these little balloons, cigarette straws, all this stuff. Dog poop.
Oh, that's my
okay?
next one.
It's been a law forever, and there hasn't been a change at all in the
Well,
in the
people
amount.
do have bags at the
in the
beach,
amount,
though.
yeah, and
use
Susan,
them. Some
Susan,
people don't.
and the bags get picked, they use the bags to pick it up, and then they throw the bags on the beach.
I just took 4
Okay?
bags of
I-
filled.
Yeah, I take
filled.
dozens of them every
But I'm
day.
letting you know that the bags are
You
there.
don't have to tell
for
me.
some
I know,
people.
I'm there
I know
every
you know,
day.
but I'm
So all I'm saying is dog poop, okay? They can't enforce dog poop law. How are they gonna enforce all these
Well,
other laws?
I'm not saying that Del, I'm not saying it cannot be enforced. I think it actually can be enforced. I think it's a matter of a witness thing, and as soon as you start to read about yourself in the paper, about not picking up your dog crap or not picking up your garbage, I think you will get a level of compliance. It's the same way you get pulled over for speeding in your car. Does everybody speed? I think to some degree or another, everybody does. But you know what? When there is some discipline on the part of enforcement, what happens? Everybody slows down and everybody starts to take care of
Well, I made the
things.
same analogy with the stop sign. But as to the dog excrement on the beach, people do use the bags, and they also leave them there. And then there are people who don't use the bags at all, because I just did it this weekend, and they leave the dog excrement. But But as long as the law is in place, people will respond. There are people who will not,
And there will
but at
people
least
that
there.
won't
Hey, I think
Yes,
we have a member of
but
the
there are
public
people
that
who
would
are
like to-
law-abiding and will listen to, will do the right thing. There's always going to be some aberrant
You wanna see,
thing.
cigarette butts out of control. Next time you stop at a traffic signal, look out the window on.
Oh, yeah,
Right on the roadway.
storm
You can
drains,
see the ground.
see, storm drains,
Huh?
the storm drains in those
All it
areas.
is just stick the butt out the window.
Right, and then it goes into the sewer when it rains.
No matter where you're gonna take them, they're still gonna be a slog.
You're not gonna change that habit. You can educate them and educate them and
Hey,
educate them.
Rona, I support you, anything to get litter off the beach, but, you know, if you, I'm thinking that if you take these little things here, it's gonna take 30 years to clean up the beach.
Well, look,
I
we
say, let's end littering now,
Well, you know,
everything,
we
all
started
together.
with banning styrofoam, the town did that. We're having PSAs about that. We got all of the restaurants here and the delis and such to comply with that. Now we're gonna do it with straws, with plastic straws, and do a PSA. It starts little by little. Rome wasn't built in a day, and we have to start from somewhere. So you can't just, if there is no law on the books, then, why should people at all comply with anything?
That's what I mean, littering is illegal, yet people still litter. It's like a vicious circle, There's
it's-
gotta be more enforcement, there gotta be more people have to pay the price for littering, and make an example for the rest of them. It has to be done that way, sorry, you can't just keep pussyfooting around with litter.
No, I'm bringing it back to the committee. What happens is it's a town committee, and then we pursue it with the town board. Sylvia is our liaison, we pursue it with her, she goes to the attorneys, and then we'll draft a law. But I'm bringing back what the trustees, because you handle the beaches, and
Have you talked to Ed Michaels and gotten his input on?
not yet, because it's, I've been here 3 times. I started here because the trustees own the
But-
beaches, and
but-
He might have some
It's
ideas.
a case, Rona, it's a case right now. Littering, whether you're on the beach or not on the beach, littering's illegal, okay?
I understand that, but
Yeah.
people don't think smoking is inappropriate, to put
Okay.
a cigarette butt in the sand.
Smoking isn't illegal,
No, but
maybe
putting the
inappropriate.
butt out in the sand
But,
should be.
but that's littering,
That's littering.
yeah.
But
Rona,
people don't think about
Have
it
you
that way.
considered maybe some embellishment or amendment to the existing law that clarifies that? Would that be maybe a
Starting point.
starting point or path of least
Well, I wanted to
direction?
get the input from the trustees first, because when I bring it back to the committee, I can say the trustees agree something should be done, then the committee will take it further from there. But until I get a sense of what the town,
We
of what
agree
the
there should be
trustee-
no litter on our
The
beaches or
trustees
in our
agree that
community anywhere.
cigarette butts are litter and should be treated as such.
Well, smoking is unhealthy, and it's unhealthy to the person standing next to the smoker.
But the litter,
I mean, that's more of a basis to ban it, as
Smoking's-
far as I'm
smoking-
concerned.
Well, that's why I
than this.
think
It's
if
already
we
covered.
talk in terms of banning it in
Yeah.
areas of concentrations of
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
it's enforceable, there's all sorts of reasons besides litter that are beneficial to not have smoke in that concentration of people. And it's a start, and it's doable
Are you referring to only the parking
enforcement-wise.
lot, though? Because you can't suddenly draw a line in the beach and say,
Now, John was
beyond here,
proposing the
beyond there.
public beach area where
Within the
the
lifeguard.
lifeguards
basically,
are.
Right, but how many feet this way, to the right, to the left? or-
the same
I'm
thing.
not,
think
I'm
that's
not writing the
pretty-
law here,
Right.
I'm just
That would
quoting
be
a
part of the
concept.
law.
Well, if I could get a
That's
kind
what
of a
the children
consensus
are,
from the
that's what
trustees to bring back to the committee.
And somebody starts to say, well, I can
So
smoke
what if I
on the
make a
inside the
motion
circle,
that the
you know, I'm outside.
trustees
Well, the
would
flags are usually
support
set.
banning smoking within the road end areas, concentrations of
as
people,
defined
however
in
you
the
want to
was
put it,
defined in the,
for the
the
reasons
law-
of secondhand smoke and kids not having to breathe in cigars
An
and
additional pollution.
littering and pollution of.
Yeah, if we work
beaches
something,
and-
if we work a designated area out, something like that, I would be in favor of doing something like that.
I honestly don't think you're gonna see a big difference in the amount of cigarette butts in those areas, because they're all gonna wash ashore, up and down the beaches.
A lot of people
know
put
until
them
you
in the
try.
water.
And no, and I
Well, it's just
understand
a-
that, but
it's- look, it's just
but again,
sending a
it's
message.
covered under the litter laws as it is, and I think the better approach would be for the health reasons.
I think, I
Yeah, well,
agree,
whatever.
Francis.
We don't have to give a reason, do we? Can we just,
No.
we can,
No,
we
just
can
give
wrap.
me a
a bunch
sense
of
to have a
reasons-
reason to
we can
ban
wrap
something.
a bunch
Would
of
we say that
reasons
we're in
together.
favor of not having cigarette butts put out on the beach and left as litter?
It's kind of, smoking is stupid, but littering is illegal, as it
Right.
stands right now.
But a lot of people don't think of smoking and putting a cigarette butt in the sand
I
as.
think the
They
way
think it's gonna
done now is
disintegrate.
We're gonna take this, that, and this, and if that's the way it's gonna do it, let's do it. Let's get them going.
I mean,
Okay,
smoking
next
is-
week, toilet paper. Next week, paper cups. We'll get them all until.
The Surgeon General says no cigarette butts on the beach.
In the state of California, which I lived and spent time there, they have, and as a former smoker, this pains me to even suggest it, but they have ashtrays at the entrance to every beach. And with signs that say smoking not allowed on this or any beach. And the problem is they don't clean up the ashtrays, so after.
Oh, God. One more item to pick up off.
Del.
Put them on the beach.
Yeah,
Put them closer to the water.
Listen,
On the
we
top
got
of the
the
trash
town to
can.
put doggy bag, you know,
You can put them next to the doggy bag, but they
right.
also do have, in California, they have professional, full-time
surf rider.
lifeguards that travel up and down the beach. And if they see somebody smoking, they are authorized to provide a summons.
Right, a summons.
Right.
Surf rider
East
had,
Hampton Town doesn't have that.
Pocket ashtrays. They slide open, you put them in your pocket. Didn't look very safe, but
There actually
They were
are
giving 'em out.
receptacles that they do put on the beach. I brought a picture of it from the internet.
hey, that looks good.
So
like
it's
a
kind of a reminder,
sign above
put your cigarette out before you go on the
Yeah.
beach.
No, yeah.
All right, so do we want to,
Entertain my motion?
I'm not even sure what that means.
yeah, what is the
Want to
Repeat your motion.
articulate that again, John?
Cigarette butts, like anything else, are
Well,
litter,
it's just
which is,
a motion to
illegal.
support the banning of cigarettes, smoking in general.
Well, I mean, can't we just say that, yes, we would support it, but we can't legislate this.
No,
The
no.
town- the town board has to
The
legislate it.
committee
We
can
have to
deal with
agree
it
to
and then bring
And
it,
if we want to say that
bring
we
it
would
to the town
support that
attorneys,
action,
right?
that might be a way to start.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying.
Okay.
Are we wrapping vaping into this also? Just to make it more complicated.
but we didn't support it when the village presented it to us.
Let's see what they put together.
Now, the village, that's a whole nother
No,
can
we-
of worms. The
Yeah,
village
it is.
presented vaping in the pavilion.
And
We
on the
sent
beach.
it back to them and said, we don't own
Go
the
ahead,
pavilion, you
knock
can do
yourself
whatever
out.
you want with the pavilion.
and then they came
They
out and
didn't ask us
said
about
it was the
beach.
village,
And then they banned it from the beach, and there it
without
sits.
asking us.
And they did that under the guise of enacting a law outside of their statutes that cover beaches. So it was I
Well, it
don't
was a
have this
health law.
statute in front of me.
Public
It was under the
safety.
health code versus under the code that covers beaches. So that's kind of, Susan, we should talk more and put it on the agenda for next time, but that's kind of how they were able to enact a law on our beach without actually
What other
having to
kind of
listen
laws
to
are they gonna enact on trustee beaches?
any,
Without
either
trustee
health code or
approval.
any other code now, so we need to keep a close eye on that and talk more about it.
But I promise
but-
you, if
but
the
what
town
would
attorney
stop
writes
the
a
town
law,
from-
if we
from
can get, as a
using the
committee to do
same
it, we'll bring it
rules,
to you.
But with our approval. You know, if they wanted to ban smoking on the beach, they could take the same route, but be more open with us, and we would support limited at this point.
Possibly.
Yes.
Yeah, in a way, it's a little backwards. I mean,
Yeah.
the town should be coming to us with a proposed law
Yeah.
and ask us how we feel
Well,
about it,
usually the
instead of
town
us-
goes through committees, you know, it's a process.
But what you're asking us to do is support something that hasn't even been proposed yet.
No, because we wanted your support because you own the beaches. I mean, we wouldn't do that as a committee, as a
But,
town
but,
committee.
but
You're
we
part of
may
the town.
support it, I mean, John, I think, would support it in a limited area, but he may not support the entire beach. So we need to see what is going to be proposed.
I promise to bring it back to the trustees if we can get it, an initiated law through the committee I mean, we definitely will come back here with it. So it's just a sense, I'm bringing back a sense to the committee that the trustees would support something like that.
We would like to support something that lessens the trash, no matter what item it is.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
Okay,
secondhand
thank you.
smoke to the little kids.
And make the place healthier, beaches
Just
healthier.
trying to swim in the ocean.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
it
much.
impacts
Okay.
everybody.
Thanks, Norman.
Anybody else? Yes. Okay, please introduce yourselves.
I'm Adam Flax, 25-year town resident.
I'm Michael Daly. I'm a resident of Sag Harbor. Go ahead.
We'd like to maybe open up a discussion about beach parking in the summer. Doing some kind of idea to have people from Southampton. We've run into, I'm sure everybody's run into the issue of they have friends that live in Southampton town and they can't come to the beach with you in the summer. And, you know, it becomes a hassle. You have to go into their car. So we want to float an idea of perhaps having some kind of reciprocal town agreement for a beach pass where the other town can, for like a nominal fee, get the other town's pass kind of thing to park in the summer.
Yeah, I come from Southampton, but I totally come in peace. In hopes that, yeah, I miss all my East Hampton friends in the summer. I lose touch with them, pardon me, because they go to their beaches and we go to our beaches, and we've all gotten tickets at each other's beaches when we figured we could maybe sneak in and attend an after-work party. Or I'm at Scott Cameron Beach, which is our favorite sunset beach right there on Mecox Bay, and all my East Hampton friends, you know, whine that they can't come. Unless, you know, we meet them at King Cullen, and then they park illegally in King Cullen, they get an R, and then we're back and forth, and yada, yada. So even if we could, we're just looking to have a discussion. I attended the Southampton Township Trustees meeting. And I wish I could show you the videotape, but then there's LTV, and then there's CTV. You know, we have our fiefdoms that we seem to recognize even at our peril. But and even if we could start it maybe in a limited fashion, so that just maybe some of the communities that are close to the border, you know, I think everybody thinks that, oh, if we open it up to those people that, you know, our beaches are going to be so crowded that it's going to be out of control. But our sense is we have 200 people who've signed up on our Facebook page, and I don't want to give you this because I'd want to have their permission before I put their names in public, but there's 200 people, and a lot of them are from Sag Harbor and Wainscott and things like this, and we have good friends that we don't see in the summer. So just wondering what your thoughts were about how we could begin a conversation around this. Is this the forum to do it in, or are we better off going to the town boards, or, and we know that it's controversial, and there'll be some people who won't like the idea, but there'll be a lot of people who will. And just wondering what your thoughts are.
You'd probably be better off talking to the people who run the parking lots.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think we
it's
have
the
any
town board is-
jurisdiction on the parking.
That's a,
You don't run the parking
Our
lot.
jurisdiction literally starts.
I think Southampton's
beach.
different.
at the beachhead.
I think Southampton may have that ability because the town granted them that ability. I don't know, but
So who manages the parking lots for East Hampton Town?
The town.
Town of East
Town.
Hampton.
Town itself?
And the village does the
And the
village.
village in East Hampton.
We're not
Yeah,
even
we
going to
wouldn't be
go near
interested
the
in the East
villages. We
Hampton
know
Village.
we'd get tarred and feathered if
I
we
mean, the
did
good
that,
news
you know.
is, I believe they're going to allow anybody to park at the beaches after 6 o'clock
Oh, is that right?
this coming season, yeah.
That would be one step
Because
in
you mentioned going to
That
a
would probably
party,
be
that you
something
couldn't
we
go.
should.
You can go.
in
But
East Hampton.
it's more, you know, like hanging out in
Yeah,
midday
no, I
sun and
understand.
swimming
Is that gonna become an
with your
official
friends, you know?
policy,
the-
or-
'cause
No, I
I
know.
think
Actually,
there are
now that I
certain
think
beaches
about
with it.
Southampton
They should
does,
actually-
Looking to do that.
trustees
That's something
do
we should
issue
encourage them. Should we
beach
write them?
parking
Something?
stickers.
Beach parking stickers,
and
right.
Ramp, launching ramp
Launching.
stickers.
I'll talk to you.
And the driver, the four-wheel drive vehicle
Right,
passes too.
But in East Hampton, that's not a trustee function.
And in Southampton, they had a lawsuit several years ago that was brought by someone who bought, and it was near a beach that was given public access, and now supposedly there's something that requires them to only allow the beaches to be used by town residents.
We have that in Indian Wells, here in Amagansett.
Do you?
It's a residents-only beach, yeah, because it began to become
Residents only.
overcrowded.
Yeah, that's
many
the
years
hard,
ago.
that's the hardest part of this dialogue, is, you know, we're in a community that is a summer community. There is an enormous amount of acrimony by people, local people that feel that they're being displaced by people that are out of town.
Sure.
Okay, and whether they're from Southampton or New York City, I mean, the battle goes on. You take Ditch Plains, you take any of these places, people go nuts when somebody's, you know, parking there. You know, you can't, you're not there for 10 minutes before there's a ticket on your car.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It's a hard, it's, you know,
And there isn't a great deal of parking at many of our beaches.
Right.
Right,
So
they-
it is
they-
quite limited,
like
and
ditch
demand
sells
is
out
quite,
quick, yeah.
quite high. You know, by 10 o'clock in the morning, they're at capacity, people are parking along the roads. And it's complicated to fathom bringing more demand in.
how's
than we
this
already
been
have.
received in Southampton? What was their response?
I think that their response was similar, you know, to yours, as I look at your body language. They're like, gosh, that would be kind
Listen,
of
I
a
wasn't
nice
saying that-
idea.
I wasn't giving you negative vibes.
No, I didn't, I
That's
wasn't.
not what was happening, okay?
They was like, geez, that would be kind of a nice idea, but holy mackerel, we're gonna get our heads handed to us if we bring this to the public, you know?
I wish we had made bigger parking
out
lots
of-
years ago.
But I think everybody assumes that my beach is the one that's gonna get blown over, whereas, you know, Adam would be coming, you know, we've already talked about it, and out of these 200 people, it's really oddly, close to 50-50 Southampton and East Hampton Township who've signed up saying, yeah, yeah.
And it's really just the people that live around the town line, you know, if somebody
It's
from
mostly
West Hampton
people-
isn't interested in
Yeah.
coming to Indian Wells.
Sag Harbor,
I
Sagaponic,
sympathize. I'd
Bridgehampton.
love to go to some Southampton beaches and be able to
Right?
park there and do things.
We have the non-resident sticker program.
You do
Right.
bicycles, non-resident, how much is
But
the
it's like,
non-resident?
it's like
fee
350
pass?
or something.
It's not cheap, I'm not sure. the
Yeah.
exact-
It's
I mean-
$350 for Southampton.
Probably
We
about
just think that, you know, like, if you made it like $40 for the other town, it'd be
Or
a
even
little easier
100
to swallow,
for
you know?
town, full-time residents.
Right. It would, I mean, full-time residents. is a given.
Non-reciprocity,
Yeah,
beach
Would like-
reciprocity.
would like-
Yeah.
And maybe even do it in a limited fashion for a season or two, and see, you know, maybe even by zip code or something.
I think regardless, it's an issue between the Southampton trustees and the East Hampton Town Board,
Okay, that helps.
because we don't have any,
The Southampton
Say.
trustees and the East Hampton board.
I think so, yeah.
Okay,
All right.
well, thanks.
Thank you.
We'll go back, but, you know, I see you shaking your head over there. You like this idea. Did you sign up for the South Fork Beach Pass?
Parties in the other town, and I'm sitting there for 4 hours, you know, in Sagaponic for Montauk, and I just want to park at the beach.
Right.
And I love all the beaches, yeah.
We
but-
do believe there would be, we
Yeah.
do believe there would be reciprocity, and there wouldn't be, I mean, Sag Main Beach is like, you know, a coveted beach, but so is Ditch, and so, you know.
From Ditch wants to go to Sag Main.
I understand that, but maybe they might want to come
capacity.
down to Scott Cameron when, you know, the bay has been open and there's been a nice sandbar formed there, and they might want to go for some light surfing instead of ditch surfing.
A lot of times, it's like, you know, you want to, even bay beaches,
Yeah.
where there isn't any pressure, like you want to go to Long Beach with your Sag Harbor friends.
Long Beach is a big
Can't.
thing.
I'm wondering, I mean, this is sort of off the charts, but what about a shuttle service that would take people, you know, back and forth.
Getting too complicated already.
Oh, no, helicopter.
Thank you
we
for
can't
coming,
do
Michael,
helicopter.
and goodbye.
Got a problem at East Hampton Airport.
All right, well,
All right.
thanks, we just wanted to get your
Thanks,
feedback.
guys.
and,
Thanks,
we
thanks,
appreciate
nice
it.
to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Look at your quest.
Anybody else? Okay, let's move on to new business. Aquaculture, Horseshoe crab survey.
We're coming close to it
Well-
now. Do we have an actual date for the little training exercise?
No, actually, he is away. He won't be back, and he's thinking mid-March to get together and have a training, and to come here to speak to us first, so that he gets an idea of what we
Will they
want.
do the training out here for it?
When I speak to him when he returns,
Okay, because when
I
we
will
spoke to him
find out.
last year about that, he said absolutely they could not do it because they have to do this thing, and if you remember, a big part of that training was basically all of us to be, you know, sexual harassment and how we behave with other volunteers was a big part of that. And for them to document that at 2 locations, being that everybody else travels from wherever they are to
Right.
Stony Brook, it didn't sound like they were really looking to budge on that, so I think we may be.
well, I'll talk to him when he returns to
Yeah.
set up a
That
date.
training, though,
but-
is really only required for like group leaders, right?
Yes.
Not required for anybody who goes.
No.
Well, they teach us
no,
how to
No,
tag.
because they just give you the sheets
Right.
to basically.
I think
And
what we.
this year, they're gonna give us the equipment that we did not have last year, and I have been asking some people if they wanted to
did.
join in.
What didn't we have last year?
What?
We did have it.
You didn't have
We
it?
didn't have it.
It existed, because I found the bag and returned it to him.
You sure that wasn't
After
our
the
bag?
fact.
'Cause we
Okay.
There was a
We
bag.
didn't know what happened to our bag.
There was a
No,
bag
no, I
in
put,
the
no, no,
office, but it-
no, what I
Did you?
did, no, what I
That was
did is I put all of our
Said
stuff
Northwest.
together, plus the
Really?
duplicates of
So
all
we
the
never, we
forms
just
that
never
we
got
had
it?
done,
We never picked it up.
and they picked it up at our offices.
But he
Okay,
did tell me
'cause
when I spoke to him.
they
that
emailed me
didn't have
just about a month ago
this year, they'll
and
make
said,
sure that they
you know, we still hadn't, have you heard from Jim, or we
No,
haven't gotten
no,
our
because the
ruler
guy-
back or something?
No, because the guy picked everything up at
Okay.
our office, and it disappeared from our office. It's not there. And I think the guy may have even sent me an email back saying, got everything, everything's cool, thank you.
Okay.
So what are we
Okay.
doing this year?
Well, I
Okay,
think
so-
that's what we. but that's
Drilling
what we-
holes in
that's what we
horseshoe
can
crabs,
sort of-
again.
That's what we can talk about, is what are we gonna do? Are we gonna do the same thing? Or are we gonna focus this on an area? Or are we gonna do Napeag and
Well, but
Northwest?
go-
And in Northwest, are we gonna do comparisons of one beach to another? And what
That's
is
what he
our-
wants to
what
talk
is our
about
goal?
when he
'Cause
comes. And
how
do
we
we want to add
started
another
this-
location?
How this all started was because the fellow from.
Tom came in.
Brought it to
Your
us
neighbor.
in the terms of is beach driving affecting this breeding activity?
Well,
We were kind
la-
of trying to compare
Oddly,
a
and
non-driving to a
Yeah.
driving beach, and we kind of did, but didn't really do it very
well, you know what?
thoroughly.
We tried to. Okay, John, for Napeag, Dell and I did try and do that. And what started out is this started with us sort of monitoring the entire perimeter of Napeag. And it was cursory at best. We checked for activity, we checked, because you can see the tracks when the tide, you know, when the tide shifts. There really wasn't that much activity except on the way north end on the eastern side of Napeag Harbor. So what we ended up doing, we found the greatest concentrations over by Lazy Point around Crasson Boulevard. So that's where we did our counts, that's where we did subsequently, that's where we did our tagging. It would be nice if we had more people, and I think the Northwest people found themselves in the same situation, is if you had more volunteers and you had more people to cover a greater area, you could expand on this, but the hard fact was, when you went out to do your counts, in sort of the tide frame that you were trying to do it in, when they told you that, you know, and they're not monitoring the whole shoreline, because their counts are based on 1 kilometer segments of shoreline. And that's what we did. We did our counts, started the same spot every time, did it through the same area every time. And
Well, we
unless they're
did
changed
too.
their protocols.
Well, we did too, but we did it on one beach, and then Tom did maybe a third of a kilometer was his, and then I
Yeah.
did some kilometer and a half walks over on his side
Yeah,
of the beach.
but was that done on a
But-
consistent basis?
Not
Yes.
consistent, well.
Well, the
not-
part
not
that we did,
really
the longer,
consistent
okay.
enough. And I guess that's what I'm driving at. If we're gonna continue that, are we gonna continue, how are we gonna continue? We're gonna
Well,
continue in.
I think the
well,
only
two or
I
way.
think this
3 or 4
conversation really is
places,
best
or-
done with Matthew
Yeah.
Scalfani
I
when he
mean-
comes to
back.
see us in March.
That-
But also, I wanted to just say that we have Aubrey Peterson this year and his environmental awareness group. They want to sign on. I've already sent them to the right website
And
section.
SOFO is also,
Yeah, I
and
talked to
so-
Frank, he was
And then we
looking
have
to
two
get
other
involved.
people that are going to join
Okay,
this
so
year.
we know there's gonna be a count program, but I recall when he first came in here, he was trying to get us to ban beach driving down in that
Right,
area
for a
during
period of
that-
time.
Yes.
And
during
we
the
haven't
spawning.
even touched that discussion yet.
well, what
We don't
our
think we've drawn a
reaction
conclusion
was,
on
was
that yet.
let's take a look
Well,
at
that's
the
what,
two
that's
places.
my next
Let's
question
see if
is,
that,
what did you find last year down that way in
if
Northwest?
you didn't find any,
Well, there's
very few horseshoe
there's-
crabs on the beach driving
well, there's a couple of
area
things.
and a lot more on the non-beach driving.
Well, that's
But
what
that
we
doesn't
found, too.
really
Well,
tell you.
Yeah, there's a couple of points to
necessarily.
that. I mean, the finer sand and the better habitat was in the non-driving area. The pebblier, grittier, grainier sand that, not grainier, but chunkier sand, pebblier sand was more in the driving area. So, I mean, at first blush, that was part of, I believe,
And the
part of
horseshoe
that
crab
equation.
tend to like the
Well,
softer.
I know, but we're
area.
kind of stabbing
Out
in
of
the
the-
dark here.
Not
Yeah.
really,
To
not
a
really,
degree.
because last year we did a baseline. We established the areas that we were gonna monitor, okay? What can you take out of that first year? Absolutely nothing, other than you found horseshoe crabs and you tagged some horseshoe crabs. It's this year
That we see them either
that,
come back with the
that we
tags.
still don't get much information, because this year, we monitor, okay? There may be more horseshoe crabs, fewer horseshoe crabs, or the same amount of horseshoe crabs, okay? If it's fewer, did we just happen to see fewer? Or is there a trend to less horseshoe crabs? It's really, that's only gonna occur in like year 3 or 5, that you're gonna be able to actually discern a noticeable trend in this. But you have to start.
Right,
And
and
we
that's what you
started
and I
la-
have
we
spoken
started
about
last
is
year,
ma-
so.
continuing with the survey, but to the end that we originally started with Tom asking, he came to us to ask us if we could prohibit driving on the beach for a period of time for spawning, to see if that would increase the amount of horseshoe crabs. Then we got off into a tangent, really, where we're seeing how many spawning and counting the
Well,
spawning.
but there's no,
But it
but
didn't
see,
let us know
Susan,
whether or not it was
see,
that from-
Susan, first off, we didn't even know, weren't really able to even identify the areas we were talking about. We couldn't unilaterally just go and decide to ban driving
Right, of
on a
course.
beach. We had to identify areas that the horseshoe crabs are found. We had to see what was happening there. Now, what hasn't been taken into account here at all, okay? We're counting horseshoe crabs. There's a horseshoe crab season, okay? There are permits out there, there's take limits, there's the whole thing. And some of our horseshoe crabs clearly got used as bait. Now, moving forward, are we gonna come up with some recommendations that we're gonna be in a situation where we may, in NAPHEG, we may, with the cooperation of DEC, do something where, let's say, I don't think it's gonna be fair to go and say, well, we don't want any horseshoe crabs taken. That's a decision for the DEC. Okay, but what we may be in a situation to do is talk to the people that have commercial permits and see if you can't limit the harvest pressure to given areas from one year to the next. Like if let's say we do this year, we find this significant breeding on the east side of NAPHEG, okay, well, I mean, that's the easiest access area. Okay, so there's fewer horseshoe crabs. Please hear me out. There's fewer horseshoe crabs there. Now, if we could voluntarily get skips on years where there's no harvesting on one side or another to try and give more opportunity for successful breeding and everything there.
This makes sense.
That we may be able to, the goal here, I would hope, is to not just maintain an existing status on populations, but hopefully enhance those populations, which is a benefit to the horseshoe crab, but it's also a benefit to the people that are using that as a source of income. So that's what my hope was of getting out of this.
That's a big
okay?
ask, I think, though.
Well, it is a big
You need
ask.
a lot of data.
But what
to
happens
answer
is,
those questions
yeah,
you
but you know what happens is you can take a certain degree of intuitive data and impart some voluntary restrictions. I think the biggest problem you do run into is when you start saying, I want to stop beach driving to help the horseshoe crabs. Well, you better make sure that you have horseshoe crabs there in the first place, because we do this with a lot of things. We do this with shorebirds, and there's a lot of people, there's a lot of members of the public that have felt that under the guise of managing some endangered species, the public is being limited in what should be their legal access to areas.
I completely agree with that, Jim. But I guess the intent last year was to see if we can get the data to show that. And if that's not our intent anymore, then we should
No, I
decide
think
what
the-
our intent
No,
is.
no, I think our intention was that. That's how we approached. You weren't part of the original discussion with the Cornell Cooperative Extension. When I reached out to Matt Sclafani, the first comment he made was, we have very limited data for the town of East Hampton.
Yes.
Okay? He said, we got to start somewhere. He was enthusiastic about the call. He came out and visited us. He said, listen, as a start here, let's identify breeding sites. Now, last year, we only did Napeague Harbor. We only did Northwest. We didn't touch 3 Mile Harbor. We didn't touch Accabonac.
But that's my point.
Yeah.
Is if we're going to start,
didn't touch
let's see
Montauk.
where the breeding is in other places.
Yeah.
Then we're losing the thing we started out with.
Or you need more teams.
Or
That's
that's
what
a
I'm
whole,
trying to do,
we
is
need
get
more
more people
teams.
involved.
Or we have a different approach. We want to see where the breeding is. And then.
I will say,
Well,
that
that was
the
the
one night that I
original
went
approach.
out with Dell and with you, Jim, in Napeague, it was unbelievable. I mean, the amount of spawning going on was incredible.
Yeah, but you know
Northwest,
what we-
where
yeah,
Tom
but you know what we
walked
did,
on-
too,
wait, one
just so
sec.
you know.
On the section that Tom walked, I walked with him a couple of times, and there were maybe 1 or 2 spawning horseshoe crabs, and he continued to go out until he couldn't anymore because of, injury, his hip. But that area where he wanted the trucks or vehicles not to be, that wasn't even an area where they were seen.
Yeah, but you don't know why.
We found them around
You
the
don't know why.
corner.
And Rick, to
with-
Rick's
with
point,
you
we
and
had
I.
a different sand consistency than he
Yes.
did. So if you really want to compare apples to apples, you should look at his area with the sand consistency.
Which was the
And then
rougher
another
sand.
area with the sand consistency that maybe doesn't have any activity on the
Mm-hmm.
beach. And you got to look at that over a period of a long
Absolutely,
time, like
yes.
years and years.
You know what's
Yeah.
interesting,
To draw
John?
any
Is that-
conclusions from that.
That this year we're seeing finer sand to the north. So
Yeah,
it may
it may
be
move.
interesting.
Interesting.
It
Yeah,
may move.
the sand, I don't know if the bluffs got scoured out down at Barcelona.
So, I mean, all I'm saying is, in terms
We
of
may see a
Northwest,
bigger
we
area
sort of
of
had two
population.
areas we were
Okay.
looking
That's
at.
interesting.
If we're gonna continue that, fine, but we should continue it with a purpose and not just waste our time with,
Counting
counting
the horseshoe crabs.
in areas that aren't worth counting.
Sean, believe it or not, we did make some progress last year, because I know previous years, folks were not as successful as our 2 teams were in our area. So we did realize some.
Are you going to be joining
some
us
growth.
this year?
Depends on my
Your
fishing
schedule,
schedule,
I know.
but I will try. But I do think that, Matt's has a criteria that he's looking for us to follow. So we can plug into their format if we have additional objectives or additional analysis that we want to do.
John, we can always say, listen, we'd like to try this in select areas. And I thought that was, when we started this, when I reached out to Cornell, that was kind of our goal. was to get some baseline and then begin to make some recommendations. But in the first conversation with Cornell, it kind of became clear that what we thought you measured in months, they were looking at and going, listen, man, I think you're talking about a few seasons here.
Yeah, definitely. This
You know.
is, this
And
is
not
not
for
a
nothing,
one-shot
not for
deal.
nothing. Del and I, we got to the point to keep the numbers up because we didn't want to, like, be shown up by you guys. We were driving a riverhead and catching horseshoe crabs and bringing them back.
Oh, gosh.
That was a good start.
You know,
That was a
Well,
good
I think
start.
we were taking tags
soon
off
as
of
I get-
horseshoe crabs and putting new
I'll be
tags on
interested to see
horseshoe
what horseshoe crabs
crabs.
come back with the tags this year.
We
If
were, I gotta tell you, when you
see
find,
them.
when we were finding, I mean, when we were finding ones that we had tagged literally the night before, we were getting all excited.
Well, it seems to me that we should decide, see what Matt can do and
Yes.
not do, and then get enough people.
Our teams.
To go to Matt, you know, leaders of groups who are committed,
Mm-hmm.
who can commit, and then we'll hash all these details out with Matt, you know.
And he is definitely interested in knowing if we want to add other areas.
Well,
And
that, I would
you know,
love
we
to
just need
see,
the manpower,
I would love to
womanpower.
see, I know it's outside of our scope, but I'd love to see Lake Montauk
You always get a
added
team
to
out
it,
there.
you know, and there's,
Oyster Pond, where the break is, I was, you know, I saw tons of malted shells over there, right on the other side of the water.
Really?
And I was horseback riding the way Kate's trail
Yeah.
goes, so we can ask. Yeah.
You always
Well, get a
Get
Montauk
a
group.
team.
You want to spearhead that in Montauk?
I'll learn, but I go to bed early, don't you do it at midnight?
no, you just, it's, you might, you can, it's just, it depends on when high tide is.
Yeah,
That's all.
okay.
There is a daytime.
Early is
It's
good.
the middle of the night sometimes.
That's the best.
Put your waders right over your pajamas.
All right, can we move on?
Okay,
Yeah.
yes,
All
oh,
right.
next, okay, education.
Education,
I'm going to be very quick about this. We had the intentional release, the ban on the intentional release of balloons, so the next thing is Mylar balloons, because they are fossil fuel
I thought
originating.
you banned all balloons.
No, yes, the intentional release of balloons, but I would like to see, and I would like to know if you would support this. Mylar balloons seem to be turning up more and more as opposed to latex.
I think because they're more durable in the environment.
Well, they don't biodegrade at all. There's no such thing as a Mylar balloon that biodegrades, and it becomes only garbage. And they're showing up more and more. I now have people sending me pictures of things that they're
Oh, no,
finding out
see
in
'em
Bonnet
everywhere.
Harbor. Yeah, it's terrible. So I approached 3 of the town board members, and they said, come in with this proposal. It's not too soon. And I would like to see a ban. I know that Block Island, there is law on the books now that they have banned the sale and distribution of all balloons. New Jersey has a law out. There are 5 states, Tennessee, Virginia. I don't have them all in my head right now. I'd like to see us ban Mylar balloons. They're really deleterious to the environment in every single way. They hurt our marine life. They are in the trees.
So this is banning the sale of.
Banning sale and distribution of Mylar balloons, and I'm sure that the litter committee would be very happy about this as well, Rona.
Is that something a town can do?
The town can do that, yes. They could add this to, and they could create an amendment to the current legislation for this. I also think because the town is fossil fuel, they want to become independent. If these are made from petroleum, it's fossil fuel, renewable energy. So I'd like to see us support a Mylar balloon ban in the town of East Hampton.
I would like to point out, which I was not aware of, and I'm assuming that nobody else on this board was aware of, that the Board of Trustees in 2013 actually banned and prohibited the use of balloons on our beaches. Back in May of 2013, the then board, spearheaded by Stephanie Forsberg, passed a law, voted within the trustees and they amended the mass gathering permits, which it shows in our mass gathering permits, that the prohibitive use of balloons.
Can't be part of the mass gathering.
Right, and it's in our, no balloons shall be utilized for the event as they pose a health hazard to marine species and are environmentally detrimental. So this is
That's only tied to this particular.
to the mass gathering permit,
Mass
because it's my understanding, and I could be incorrect, but at the time when they tried to enact this, they presented it to the town board and the East Hampton Village Board, and they didn't come on board with them on this. So this was the only way at that time that the trustees could get something enacted within their jurisdiction of the beaches.
That's a great.
So this
thing
is
to
something that
have.
was actually done back in 2013 and is on our,
Okay.
But
So that's for
Stephanie-
mass gatherings.
Stephanie Forsberg?
Stephanie Forsberg spearheaded that
Right.
whole.
So that would be for mass gatherings on the beach, but I am actually going to ask that the town board ban all Mylar balloons.
And it seems to me, I don't know much about inflated balloons that float up in the air, but they all look like they're Mylar to me, on the ones I see on the
On the
Well, the ones
beaches.
that make it
Yeah,
see
there are
latex, there's
definitely
latex.
more
Stick
Mylar
around in
balloons
Mylar.
Yeah,
now
there's
than.
latex and then the Mylar are like the
Mylar is the shiny silver, it's actually
printed, have
plastic,
the
that's what
designs
it
on
is,
them,
it's stretched
okay,
plastic and
right.
it's coated
Okay.
with colors and things, so I'm going to
They can make
ask-
shapes out of them with the Mylar. They can make square balloons and
Heart
ones would
balloons.
look like animals.
Right,
and
right, right.
and,
Oddly enough, like seals or whales.
like one of the pictures that I took
like
of
turtles.
Yeah.
Black Friday cleanup with Surfrider in Montauk, the next day, Happy Thanksgiving balloon. And every second, they're Mylar balloons, and they're in the trees, the same thing as the latex, but, so that is what I'm going to work on next, and I will go to the town with this, but I would like to know how the trustees feel about a ban on Mylar balloons.
I don't have a problem expanding it to Mylar.
Yeah, I don't either. It seems to me if we've already got this law in the books, we tried
I thought,
this,
I actually,
we've
I'm gonna be
taken
honest,
this
Susan,
step.
I thought that was already part of it.
No. The only thing that the town passed is the intentional release, which means 25 balloons, no longer, every 24 hours. But it doesn't, you can still have Mylar balloons, you can still have latex. And we didn't, and the key, again, is about education. So we don't want to hurt kids with birthday parties and things like that, or if you have balloons in your house.
But now you do.
But now, I want to penalize, the Mylar balloons, yes. You can still have your latex, which are not biodegradable.
So we're gonna have the balloon police going around town.
Yeah.
We can make them look a cigarette,
We're
but
gonna be sick code enforcement on a.
It's not only gonna be on the beach, it's gonna be it's gonna be in your backyard.
Pick up his trash
think
in the garbage dump, and then the birds
would
go
ban
and
the
they,
sale of-
and the fish, and the whales, so.
Illegal.
So you would be in support? Could I,
And a
I
memo?
think we went around here and everyone was
florists
in
are gonna hate it.
support.
Yep.
yes, could I ask,
Exactly what I was
that we
thinking.
have a,
I guess-
The
yeah, I
supermarkets
would
all have-
support it. The only, I think you might get pushback by the fact that you just passed a law.
But I
and
went to the town
Without that law even taking effect almost, you're
Yeah,
passing
you're
another law.
doubling down.
but I've spoken to 3 of the town board members, and they said, come in and present it to us, it's not too soon. I did ask, so if, with
Well, I
that,
think, in the context of this existing regulation already, which was fostered
For mass
by the
gatherings.
trustees.
For the trustees in
several years
2013.
ago, there's a logical
Well, we
next
should,
step.
we should dig up the resolution and see what it says.
Yeah, Marlene and I were looking for it today, and the correspondence between the trustees and the town board and the village board at that time, but I just picked up some stuff in some of the minutes that I had gone through.
Because I would think, I don't think that appears on our current,
It does,
It does.
actually, yeah.
does it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it does.
And in 2015, it was longer. It talked about the harm to marine animals on the master permit.
so we're
Right,
already,
but on
2013.
the,
On our
on the
current
actual
one, yeah.
permits that we,
Yep, on
Yes.
the second page, yeah.
okay.
You have it there,
Oh,
or
I believe you.
Yeah.
Just,
page 2, yeah.
okay, so just, at our next meeting, is it possible to have something written that would include this to the amendment to our town board, to our town ban, but also to our trustee currently on the books, that would say,
What you're
specifically
proposing-
identify Mylar?
you're proposing to ban the sale of Mylar balloons,
Yes.
which is very different than us saying you can't have
Yeah,
balloons
but
on the
we
beach.
have, what I'm saying is we have the backup of the trustee, we have the town ban now, so this is just singling out a specific material that is very harmful, and they seem to be everywhere now. In the village, you know, the grocery store sells them, the florist shop sells
I
them.
think all you can get from the trustees is their support for this. You
Right,
can't
that's
get
what I'm
you
asking
can't get
for.
any trustee resolution doing anything about it.
No, I
other
understand,
than
but it's to the
supporting.
town that I'm going to go to. So if I know that the
They
trustees
show
are
up on
in
our
support.
beaches all the time, so, yeah,
Well, they won't
So-
anymore.
I don't think anyone has a problem with that.
I don't think so, yeah.
So if I could get some sort of letter created where we would agree to
Well, I don't know
support
about
this.
that.
Oh, come on.
Let's get some traction out of the town board first.
You draft a letter, Susan.
Okay, exactly, yeah, all right.
And Susan, as we've been doing some other letters, if you would like to take a shot at, I'd be happy to
Great,
edit
all
it
right.
and take a
So
look at
I'll-
it. And
Perfect.
we can spare
It's not gonna be that much different than the first letter we did to
Chris, don't
the
commit
town.
to too much until you get them lazy point leases.
Excuse me,
All right,
you gotta support me,
let's
and
go
then
back
I'll
to-
support you.
let's go back to 3 Mile
First
Harbor.
things first.
Mine's a small thing.
We have one left there, 22 3 Mile Harbor Drive, renew permit, T2-17 for stairway construction.
This is an existing permit that expired.
You're on 3 Mile Harbor now?
Yes.
I guess we're skipping
Skip Georgia.
Georgica?
No, you told us to table
We
it.
don't have George Con?
I didn't tell you anything.
Oh, they told me.
Says
Kept
right
working.
here, taken off the agenda.
17 Cove
Anyway,
Hollow?
I was gonna report on that, but
Then go
don't
for it.
worry about
No,
it. No,
go
no,
ahead.
listen, go ahead, dump on me. I'm used to it now.
You've had this stage all night.
No, anyway, 17 Cove Hollow, I looked at it. It is not just a Phragmites cutting thing. Apparently, there was Phragmites cutting for some time. Okay, there was some illegal activities there that, what is nice to see is the village of East Hampton is actually taking a concerted effort in getting these violations into compliance. Cove Hollow Farm subdivision was one of the first subdivisions out here that actually, in the village anyway, that had scenic easements in it. And almost universally, those scenic easements have been violated to the point of some of them not even existing. This has been added, the property owner does have a plan in for the revegetation of this area, and what I thought was really nice, it's a 50-foot wide buffer, okay? And this is something that on some of these properties, we've kind of gone back and forth, pecking at these things, negotiating to get to a 30-foot one. There's some consistency. We approved number 3 Cove Hollow Farm, number 7 Cove Hollow Farm. There's an application that was put in for 25, but again, they have some violations. But on 3 and 7, 50-foot wide buffers. On 17, the proposal is for 50-foot wide buffer. The plant community that they're planning on revegetating with is far more applicable to the area than some of the other ones we've seen. I would like to table it only so that they have time to, one, settle the issues with the village and get their DEC permits, and I asked them to then come back to us, because in all likelihood, there may be some modifications.
And this
here.
is a certain parcel we're
This
talking
is
about?
number
Which-
17 Cove Hollow
Oh,
Farm Road.
17 Cove Hollow.
Okay. That's
I'm
it?
done.
Okay. 22 3 Mile.
I talked to, this is, the permit's expired for a staircase down to the beach. It was a permitted use, permit 2-17. Expired in June 2018, so he just came in and made an application for a new permit to do exactly the same thing. So I think it's fairly straightforward. He did ask, the attorney, Carl Ires, did ask me if we would consider possibility of, not in this case, they're gonna do the work this spring, so they don't necessarily need any extended permit, but in the future, if we would consider perhaps tying the length of our permits to a natural resource special permit or something that the property may also have for the same work, or our part of the
streamline.
Well, we've had that with natural resources, we've had that with DEC permits, And I know on the DEC permits, we have the same thing that we discussed here tonight on 3 Mile Harbor Marina there, that we still make them come back to us, and it's really just a nod and a wink, but.
Annual review.
But it would certainly streamline things.
It would, because this is a full-on new application with all the paperwork and fees and everything.
Yep.
I think we discussed trying to coordinate
I think it would
departments
be
in
nice
the
if we could.
meeting in the past, not that long ago.
So I think we'll have to keep in mind that when we do, give out permits, we should be cognizant of timeframes of other permits and try to tie things to the same timeframes. So I'd just like to make a motion to accept this, to issue this permit for this staircase.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, old business. Sag Harbor Village expanded jurisdiction.
Okay, back in 2016, the trustee board was approached by members of the Sag Harbor Village Harbor Management Committee regarding the interest of Sag Harbor Village to expand their jurisdiction in Northwest Harbor in the southwestern corner of the harbor, somewhat north and east of Havens Beach. They provided 5 key points of interest that were documented by their Sag Harbor Harbor Master regarding registration of vessels, mooring tackle requirements, liability insurance, owner responsibility for removal of boats, and expansion of the village's no discharge zone. And they expressed concerns that it was tough for New York State to get out there. They didn't have a big enforcement fleet in eastern Suffolk County. And we met with them. Rick Whalen, our attorney at the time, met with the village attorney. And, it seemed to make some sense. Chief Michaels felt that it was reasonable. I think Supervisor Cantwell at the time felt comfortable with it. We also made some other recommendations that water testing be undertaken by Dr. Gobler, which has been commenced, as we know, which was great. That a recreation and conservation area be established, which is documented in the map. And that certain rights of the trustees and the residents of the town of East Hampton were to be represented in this new area, which was written into the New York State legislation for the expansion, which was great. Sag Harbor has now gotten around to doing their waterways plan and law for the area. And Jim and I and John attended a recent meeting there, public comment, and the thought had come up at our last meeting that we should have the rights of our board and our community written into the waterways law at the Sag Harbor Village level. So Jim made that recommendation at the meeting. And there were a few other points that came up in questions that I documented in a letter that Chris cleaned up. And I then also, referenced certain key documents that start with the original request from the Sag Harbor Village Harbor Management Committee, the actual language in the New York State legislation, some key historical points of trustee interaction with the evolution of commerce and development of Sag Harbor that the trustees have contributed to through real estate transactions and grants and other transactions, and some references to our own waterways law with some recommendation on free anchoring and notification of the harbor master, and a letter from the mayor of the village to Francis, our clerk, indicating, their board's interest in continuing to work with us, not unlike we do with the town and the village on areas of our beaches. So everyone should have a copy of the letter. Chris has reviewed it, and we would like to send this over as part of the public comment period, which is closing, I believe, later this week. So it'd be, I think, helpful to get this out to the village.
I'd like to make a motion that we send this out as written.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Rick, I just have a quick question.
Yep.
Before we move on this one. I am really happy with the way the letter turned out. I like the way our relationship's going with Sag Harbor Village and their maritime community. My question is, they mentioned something about free anchorage there. And I was just looking into it a little bit. I didn't see that there was any real, is Is it a designated area where they're going to allow the free anchorage? I didn't see it on the map, and I just thought, if you're allowing free anchorage, maybe it'd be nice to sort of recommend some sort of designated area, because the way it looks now, there's really no room for it, and we don't want to, have them in the channels or out.
Right, I think the
They
mooring
had
area.
they had actually that defined, that whole mooring area is free.
Yeah. So they have a grid that's developing for moorings. Right now, I think there's 3 or 4 commercial mooring operators.
So am I reading that incorrectly? When I'm thinking free anchorage, I was thinking you're allowed to drop anchor.
No, it
Versus
says,
use the
doesn't it,
mooring.
it says in here, in designated areas.
That's language that I put in there as I'm trying to
Oh.
understand this.
Yeah, well, I think it is the general mooring area. If you look at the map, I know it's a little bit small, but the map should delineate the mooring area outside of the breakwater. And that area,
It's hard on those black and white ones to really see it.
it shows it kind of like right here, Chris.
Okay.
So it's this general outer area. So mooring operators will be dropping balls, just like in 3 Mile Harbor
Sure.
that goes on. And they have tackle standards now, and
So
they're gonna
dark.
sticker them just like our balls, which is great. But people can go over here and free anchor.
And that's what we're talking about.
Well, we're talking about balls.
Okay.
So this whole area was just kind of the wild, wild east, if you will. And now, at least it's a delineated area, all the moorings that go in are permitted, and free anchoring will, I think for the foreseeable near term, will be free anchoring.
Okay.
But it will be inside that area, and there may be some language on larger boats, because when
Well, yeah, I was
big
gonna
charter
say,
boats come in,
They have to anchor.
they anchor. They've got
But
the
that's
means.
not free, that's not gonna be free,
I
right?
think the international boats and the commercial boats are gonna register. I don't have full confirmation of that, but, if we want to insert that language, we'd like to see that. That's language we could
So-
insert.
A while ago, we were talking about the East Hampton residents being charged at the same rate as Southampton,
If
as
they
Sag Harbor
started
Village.
charging.
That's the language that
If
we
they
inserted.
charge.
So if you refer to the language in the New York State jurisdiction, it's a full paragraph pertaining specifically to the trustees and to the residents of the town of East Hampton. That's the same language we're asking to be put into the waterways law document at the Sag Harbor Village
And
level.
that's an if, there's an if associated with that
I think it's
charge?
when.
Well, we want that put in. I mean, it's something we're asking for. It's not a mandate. We hope that that will be received well. It's public comment period, so this is the appropriate time for us to request that.
So does that mean that free anchoring will morph into charged anchoring
Well,
at some
Well,
point?
it could, or at least into a registration process.
I
It
think
could be, there's an evolution here, not unlike 3 Mile. We continue to refine, and they will probably continue to refine. So I don't think that they're gonna have it perfect in the first years. I don't think we would either.
Okay.
I think what we all recognized when we were discussing this in the first place was that there's no intention to charge for the moorings at this time, but the reality is, for them to police and manage the pump outs and all of the other stuff in this area, there's gonna be an expense. And in all likelihood, they'll get to a point where to rationalize that additional expense, they're gonna have to start charging for the moorings. And right now in the village, if you're getting a mooring permit inside, it's much like any other community. You're paying at a different rate as a non-resident as you would for a residence fee. Being that some of this land is trustee bottom land, or might be trustee bottom land, we asked that they agree, and they did on the writing of the law, that the East Hampton residents would be treated the same as the Sag Harbor residents.
Does that answer
There-
your question?
Outside the breakwater, moorings will be placed by commercial operators.
Correct.
The village will not charge the
The
operator? for placing-
operator has to register with the village. So if you want to put 10 moorings out that you're going to manage throughout the summer for transient visitors, you have to register with the harbor master. And then
That'll
then the operator of the mooring does charge. It's a profitable,
Charges
it's a
the
for-profit
boat
business.
But
And
the
the boat
village,
owner has to have,
there's just a registration from the village, there's no
Correct.
charge for the
so
placement of that.
there's a control of how many moorings are out there, who the operator is, And then each mooring ball is stickered, like our mooring balls are in Fremont.
Can an individual go through that same process and drop
Yes.
their own mooring as well?
Yep. But, you know, since not a lot of guys have haulers anymore, most of it's a paid service, I think, where you would have an operator put it out for you. I think that's mostly what we're seeing these days. I think there's very few do-it-yourselfers anymore putting out 200-pound mushroom anchors with 3/4 chain. But it is possible.
Didn't you also mention last meeting about an app that is being used? Was it you who mentioned the app where you register before you even get in, make sure that there is a space for you? Which
Yeah.
we don't currently have. It's all paperwork
It's
now, right?
used, you know, like Seacoast Enterprises uses the app, Sag Harbor uses the app.
Oh, okay.
For slips, and so they are evolving, they're taking that same journey. The industry really evolved recently.
Makes it much easier.
So
for
it
everybody.
will be easier to do more registrations in the future. But I think in fairness to the process, I don't think, you know, any municipality can encompass everything in one
The
step, so to
process,
speak.
yeah.
And it is, you know, I think an ongoing dialogue as well.
And this language about free anchorage has got nothing to do with moorings, right? That's separate.
Anchoring and using a mooring is separate, just like Mark alluded to earlier. You know, we have people that free anchor in Fremont. So I don't think it would be fair to try and, you know, impose something in our western waters or bottomland that we wouldn't impose in our central bottomlands. You know, and maybe we want to revisit our language too a little bit at some point. The challenge they have, you know, Fremont doesn't have the bandwidth of Northwest Harbor. So you don't have 150-foot, 200-foot vessels coming into Fremont Harbor, where Northwest Harbor you have that deep water channel. And that's where I think they may have a little bit of a rub down the road, where, you know, if you have a 200-foot commercial charter boat, drops anchor for 2 months in the summer, you know, they probably should be registering with the harbor master and so on.
So as it stands, you or I, if we had the wherewithal, could go put 10 moorings in and manage them and use that as a for-profit business in that area?
Via registering with the village first. Yeah, you do have to register those moorings.
Do they charge for mooring space inside the breakwater? They do.
So it's a logical progression, I think.
So this will, at some point,
At some point.
probably become a charge.
You know, the village, I think, you know, one of the village board members did express at the meeting the interest in encouraging voters to visit Sag Harbor.
Right.
So they are balancing the, you know, desire for commerce and the, you know, need to have oversight and environmental controls.
Right.
So I think they're on the right track with, you know, where they're going.
Good. Sounds good to me.
All right, great.
Okay, thank you.
33 Old Fireplace Road, debris on the trustee feet.
I don't know whether you recall Ray Harden coming a month or so ago about the piece of bulkhead. It's gone. We did have an estimate from a contractor that Ed Michaels had forwarded over to us. It was about $3,500. We found somebody that would do it much cheaper. They did it in conjunction with Steve Lynch. It was a nice cooperative effort. The bulkhead's out of there. No mess to the yard. The homeowner seems to be happy. I think we should be happy.
We haven't seen the bill, have we?
Nope.
Okay,
No, we haven't, but I am assured that it will be.
okay.
Ray sent you a thank you if you want to read it. It's very nice.
That's all.
All right, committee reports, aquaculture, letter of support for New York State nitrogen fertilizer legislation.
Okay, we've received a request last year, we sent a letter to the New York State Assembly and Senate. It was dated April 23rd, 2018, and it stated that the elected trustees of the freeholders and commonality of the town of East Hampton support Long Island Assemblyman Steve Engelbright and Senator Kemp Hannon's legislation to curb the use of water-soluble high nitrogen fertilizers on Long Island. And there were two bills. Unfortunately, those bills passed overwhelmingly in the Assembly, but they were never brought to the Senate, and it expired before legislation could be passed or voted on. So they've asked again, this Marissa Gross of Grassroots Environmental Education, that bill, those two bills are back on again, and it's exactly the same legislation proposed that we agreed to last year, so I'm asking if we would like to take a vote and once again support this legislation. And I remember distinctly, Jim, you saying it's not so much the fertilizer as it is the water distribution that gets the fertilizer into the ground and the waterways and so forth. But I think we did support it last year, and I would love to have the trustees support this again, this legislation.
I wouldn't support it tonight. I'd want to see both copies of the legislation.
Okay,
'Cause I'm not going to take somebody's word that it's the same as the last time.
Oh, it is, but I will send you,
But
I was running out the
What's important
door.
to me is what is actually the description of a high nitrogen water soluble fertilizer, because
Okay.
that encompasses a pretty.
After the meeting, I will give, I brought them in for, here. I was able to just print out 2 of them before I ran out the door, which is why I was late.
I had the
So,
same question.
I know. I will send this to everybody.
Sorry.
But I didn't have enough, it wasn't enough time. But it is the same exact legislation. And this year, it is, again, it's Todd Kaminsky, and he is the chair of the Environmental Conservation Committee, and again, Assemblyman Steve Engelbright.
Is this time sensitive? Can we do this at the next meeting?
I'm going to read, I think her letter is that they will be delivered in Albany to other key sponsors of the bill, and they have updated this in longislandwater.org website, and I think they are, let me just run through this 1 second. I think it is somewhat of time is of the essence, but I will check, and I'll send you the legislation in an email. How's
All right,
that?
sounds good,
Okay?
thank you.
All right, thank you.
Can I just add one thing to aquaculture here, just real quick? Got a letter from, Francis got a letter from Suffolk County Aquaculture Lease Program. This is a letter for public notice, request for written comments on proposed shellfish aquaculture lease site number 852. This is out in the Promised Land, Lazy Point area. And this lease is being sought as a result of the settlement of the lawsuit between the Devon Yacht Club and the Suffolk County Aquaculture Lease Program, in which the applicant moved their proposed lease from an area closer to the Devon Yacht Club farther to the east. And this is the new site that was agreed upon in the lawsuit. So this is a public notice for comment on that site.
And when does the public notice close?
Issued February 14th, expiration date April 15th.
Can we-
The lat longitude coordinates for that site, or anything that gives us a map or anything?
Yeah, I think, did this go to everybody, Arlene?
I didn't get that.
No,
I don't know.
I can send it out tomorrow to everybody.
And Arlene, you can send
PDF?
this out to
It's got the lat
everybody.
long on it.
It's got latitude and longitude on it,
Thanks, John.
and a map.
Okay. Beaches, 211 Lily Pond Lane, dune restoration.
We're still, the applicant on that is still waiting for DEC approval. I think it's close. Hopefully, they'll get their approval from DEC. They still need ours in Village, but I assured them that we could move rather quickly.
Okay. Education, community outreach, anything?
Montauk Friends of Erin, I brought that up at the last meeting, if we wanted to participate, and apparently the truck cannot. I thought of maybe getting the kids from the Montauk School and giving them the T-shirts to wear and marching in the parade, if,
Had
you
the
know, the
insurance
ban the
company
balloon
like that
T-shirt.
idea.
Excuse me?
Had the insurance company like that idea.
No, the insurance company for the truck. I thought originally maybe we get the truck out there and the kids get in the truck, but now
Not a good
it's gonna be
idea.
a walking down the roadway if somebody wants to, join in. That is, in Montauk, there is one here in East Hampton on the 17th itself, but I thought Montauk, since they supported the
How many kids?
ban on balloons.
How many kids are you thinking?
That I would have to speak to the teacher, and the person that helped me, Sarah Newberry, is away in New Zealand, but I'll call the
visiting her
principal and
daughter.
see if
Yeah.
there's some interest.
You know what I was gonna suggest? It's really hard to take and put kids on a town-owned vehicle.
Oh, no, the truck is no longer considered.
Okay,
We
but what I was gonna
walking.
say is there's an opportunity to do exactly what you wanna do with a private vehicle, private contractor. Okay, so talk to me, we may be able to get
Okay.
something done there where you can kinda have your cake and eat it too.
Okay,
All right?
sounds good. All right, I'll see you after the meeting.
All right, Lazy Point leases, we touched on. Roads, report from the committee.
I did hear from Mr. Hanks again, just yesterday, and we spoke a little bit about his interest in the gate. And I think he is now in agreement that he should do it on his property. And so any future improvements he will be doing on his property, and I strongly encouraged him to get his easement in place with the trustees, that's in his best interest to have proper ingress and egress to his property. And he is gonna check with his title company and see what he can do to get his paperwork in order with us. So he seems agreeable to trying to take the high road, so to speak, on this one.
Good.
All right.
And, we're gonna keep in touch on it, and, I think there's a little bigger discussion on some of these things that Del and Susan and I need to get back to. But that was just a very recent development. And
Oh, good.
so I didn't get a chance to get you guys an update on that, but that just took place.
I'm going to bring with me next meeting a sample of the medallion for the post.
Good.
Exactly like I showed you in the picture, just to give you a physical piece to look at. And then if we all agree on it, I'll have prices, and I'll try to get a few different ones, and then we can kind of see if we want to go through with that.
What kind of materials are you considering?
Well, I had a couple considerations, from porcelain to a pressed plastic core, like Durabond, bond they call it, or even metal. I mean, I'll bring a variety of options and prices to choose from. Seems like the porcelain ones are the most reasonable, but they would be easily vandalized. So there's a few considerations. I'll have a whole presentation, short presentation, to consider the options.
Great.
I want to go back, I'm sorry, go ahead.
As far as the surveys, I haven't gotten a chance to complete all that and get all that information back, so hopefully by the next meeting I'll have all that. And Dell and I did take a ride the other day down to Carlsruhe Cross Highway, and that might want to be something we want to look at up on the other side, coming off Abraham's Path and
Where that, the trail goes
Fairview?
through.
Fairview.
Fairway?
Fairway. There's a lot of development back there, and that's where Carlsruhe Cross Highway, the pavement ends, but it runs all the way through to Springs Fireplace Road from that dead end, and it's part of that Pomonok Path. And I know, just by going through some of the minutes today, trying to find information on that whole balloon thing, there was, back in 2014? Well, anyway, they did have an issue with some encroachments on Carlsruhe up in that area back then that they addressed. So it might be just another one for us to
Yeah.
hit on next.
Okay.
I remember hearing Diane mention something about that a while ago.
Yeah.
Thanks, Susan.
I have to look more further into that one.
I'm going to jump back just for a moment on the community outreach. I know I've already said this, but just for the record, I wanted to again say that Aubrey Peterson of the East Hampton High School is gathering students for the Horseshoe Crab Survey, which I think is very good to get the kids involved in this. And also Brian and I and Ashley Oliver of the East Hampton Shellfish Hatchery will go to the Emmegans Elementary School on April 22nd.
Okay.
I mean,
Great.
the high school students might be great, on the day shift for the.
If they can get away from school and the time is right, because they're out at, what, 2:10 or something?
There is no
2:15?
day shift.
There's not. Yeah, we have to go with them.
They were encouraging a day shift last year.
We got, yeah, they didn't tell us about it. That's news to us.
They had documented both high tides as potential.
We did a couple, or I did,
During the day?
couple daytime
I don't
high
think they're quite
tides.
as productive.
Wasn't much going on, but
Yeah.
I was
They want to
curious.
go
I
at
was
night.
curious.
It's more exciting at night, you know, in the dark with
But you
the
know, if we're gonna
flashlights.
include in this thing, remember, there's some pretty strict guidelines if you're including kids into.
They've already been sent to the website.
good.
Yep. I spoke to Matt about it, and he directed me, so I sent that to Aubrey. And they'll have to fill it out. The kids have to have a document that's signed by their parents, or parents come.
Has to be oversight.
Okay, let's put that under horseshoe crabs next meeting. It's getting late. We've already
Have to be on the
horseshoe
road at
crabbed.
3 o'clock.
All right.
All right, payment of the bills.
Bam.
There are no bills.
Wow, does that ever happen?
Hey, many.
I haven't seen it.
South Jersey.
All right, we have minutes for January 28th. Anybody have a chance to look at them?
I did, I gave.
Thank you, yes, I
Colleen
made the
some
changes.
What's that?
And February 11th I reviewed too, so.
You
I
might
don't know if
just
anybody
want to
has
check
difference.
February 11th, where it says that I seconded the
Yes,
motion
I
to
already
adjourn the
I
meeting.
corrected that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
I picked
so
up on that one too.
are you making a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion to accept
With the changes,
Second.
yeah.
with the changes.
With the
Second.
changes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's for January 28th. What about the 7th, February
Oh, wait,
11th?
that was January 28th.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes with the change of Dale's second.
And I had put in some other ones.
Okay,
I don't know if
is
she
there a
had a chance
second?
to go over them.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, great. Financial report for the month ended January 31st. Anyone have a chance to go through that? Nope, table that? All right. Report of the clerk. I can tell you that we received a donation of 5 volumes of trustee records from the Amagansett Library.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's 5 books, it's not full
Is that from you?
collection.
You
but-
King?
What was the name of the one?
They
that
don't want
brought
them
those
anymore?
over?
Jackie?
The archives? Cynthia.
Oh, Cynthia, yeah.
Cynthia
Right.
gave them to us, but Jackie's also been very helpful.
Okay, and we did send them a thank you letter. All right. New York class, I think we're tabling that. Someone's doing more research into how to handle our money investment, yeah. Anybody have anything else?
I just have one thing. I
Okay.
don't know whether you know, Brian Burns' wife is going in for some surgery.
Mhm.
I think this week, and what I would like to do is ask the permission to send flowers to the hospital.
I'm on
I
board.
think that's
To
a
hand
lovely
to the
idea.
trustees. Do we have a budget?
Flowers are expensive, what,
Yeah, it's getting
They're
250
very
bucks?
expensive, 100.
$50, the guy comes in and.
$100.
They bring
You
you
get
2
flowers for
flowers.
$100.
You need something that's 100.
Especially in
It's
Manhattan.
delivery, it's
Especially in
the
Manhattan.
city.
Oh,
In the city.
Yeah, it's Manhattan.
Yeah, you
Do a
need
nice-
at least 100, if not more.
Okay.
Really?
Put it on a credit card? or-
I mean,
Yeah, we have,
It said
we'll do
250, it says.
a full FTD in the city.
What
We
I'll
have
do is
a-
I'll give
Yeah.
Brian a ring in the morning. Gotta get the
I don't
particulars.
remember.
You gotta go see Kyle.
Lori has the.
Yeah, I know, it's not, $50 gets you 2.
Francis,
Do
I
I have
have
a
a
motion?
question.
No,
Does the credit
Yeah, and
card
delivery is like
payment
30
go on the payments?
It's not a credit card, it's a debit card.
Does it go on these payments or not?
It
Just curious.
just show, I don't think it would show up on this. It would show up on the bank statement, because it would just be taken out of the account.
Okay.
We don't have a credit card, it's strictly debit.
Right.
So we're good?
Yeah, anyone have to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.